easier it is to sell souls.
There is a new price on freedom, so buy into it while supplies last. Changes need to be made. No more curbside baggage. 7 p.m. curfew. Racial profiling will continue with less bitching. We've unified over who to kill, so until I find more relevant scripture to quote, remember, our God is bigger, stronger, smarter, and much wealthier. So wave those flags with pride, especially the white part.
We're selling addictive 24-hour candlelight vigils in TVs. Freedom will be defended at the cost of civil liberties. The viewers are glued to television screens, stuck, cause lots of things seem too sick. I use opportunities to pluck heartstrings for theme music. I show you which culture to pump your...
All right, hello there.
Oh, we're live?
We are live.
Oh, shit. Welcome to the Grift. I'm the Rev and
I'm Gonzo.
Give us all your money.
What else is there?
The news, I guess.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. I mean, as always, it's been a week.
It's been a week. We had a very fun speech from our very intelligent and not entirely deranged chief executive.
Yeah, that was definitely something. I skipped most of it. I'm not going to lie.
I've gotten the cliff notes from the internet. I didn't watch any of it.
Yeah, I wasn't going to
I didn't
give
care.
the satisfaction of watching it all. Like, yeah, I know POTUS and all that bullshit, but...
Your 77-year-old namesake was dragged waving his cane out of the proceedings.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
You know what? That was great.
That was pretty cool.
The cane thing was kind of dumb. It was a little, like, hitting on the nose, the whole Charles Sumner thing, a little bit too much, and the ageism all at the same time.
Yeah.
But... and for those who don't know, Charles Sumner, the caning of Charles Sumner, you should look that up. It's like one of those events that like led directly to the Civil War. It's amazing.
A shitty town in Florida is named after the man who did it.
It's true.
Yeah.
Is it Sefner?
Brooksville.
Brooksville, that's right. Brooksville, yes.
Yeah, Brooksville.
Look that up. It's an interesting story. But soon thereafter, what I love about it is like the early Republicans back then, who were a progressive pro-labor party that like corresponded with Karl Marx, like, and had like all sorts of leftist economists and shit in it, like Henry George, who was great. Like,
Yeah.
But
It's amazing how quickly they fell off. It was
Right.
like 20 years.
yeah, like
And they
right-
were basically already becoming the modern Republican Party.
Yeah, right after the Civil War had started. Yeah, but it was before that they were like this Western like tough guy party, and they started like after Sumner got caned, they started carrying pistols and hatchets around, and like there are old like desks that were part like legislative desks that have hatchet marks in them from when like a Southern Democrat would talk shit, and they just pull a hatchet out and stick it in the wood and be like, "I will fucking kill you." That's how the Republicans used to be, and it was great.
And that is the energy the modern Democratic Party needs to channel.
Yes, 100%.
Learn from your previous betters how to do this.
The old progressives.
The old progressives.
Because look, when they go low, because they're going to keep going low, don't go high. Go above their head with a hatchet. That's
fair.
That's the best way to go. High.
It was a dumb speech.
It was dumb. Yeah.
I am tired, and I will die tired probably of trying to explain the difference between transgender and transgenic to people who have no interest in knowing that there's a difference between the two.
Oh my God.
They were not changing the genders of mice. They were taking human genes and inserting them into the mice genome so that they could do medical testing and see what the techniques they were developing would affect those human genes, because you can't just do the tests on humans.
Yeah.
Our generations are too long for one thing. You need quick generation turnover
Right.
for these sorts of things a lot of the time.
Dear Joe Schmo out there in the world, if you don't understand the basics of a paper, of a study, of why a piece of research exists, and you think it's just the headline or something from the title of it that doesn't quite jive with like your common sense folksy beliefs, Ignore it.
Ignore it.
Stop. Don't pontificate on it. Don't form an opinion.
Along that line,
Just move on.
Along that line, one of the things that he apparently rambled about, and again, I didn't watch the speech, was sedentary migrants. And he was talking about like studies on sedentary migrants, and nobody could really figure out what he was talking about. And I was on TikTok, and there was a geologist who was talking about, and she wasn't sure, but she is fairly certain that he was misunderstanding geological research papers about sedimentary migration due to glacial inclusion.
Yeah. Again, if some words seem in a paper for a research study to just hit on some hot button issues in your brain, and you don't understand or haven't read the paper, stop.
The word biases appears in almost every scientific study.
Yeah.
Because it is a specific scientific term that you use when you're writing studies.
Yeah, especially because when you're sometimes trying to control against them, right? Like, they try to control against biases, and they try to look, there are a lot of words that get used in these things.
Don't be afraid of words.
You don't need to understand.
Like, you don't
need to.
Don't be afraid of words.
I am slightly more capable than the average person on the street at reading these things, and I'm not qualified to read them.
No, I can muddle through a scientific paper until the language gets too technical.
Yep.
And then
until it starts to get into the math too. Yeah, and then I'm like, okay, I'm out.
They're using words that are not normal, common parlance. It's not the sort of language normal people use. It's scientists using specific scientific terms to express specific scientific ideas to one another.
Right. And they're specific typically to the field. So again, if you've got some dipshit engineer friend who reads a social science study or a biology study, and they tell you that it means one thing, and somebody in the in that field is like, no, that's not what it means. Don't believe your dipshit engineer friend. He may have the technical background to understand like the framework of the paper, but the actual specific terms and things that they're dealing with inside of that paper, he does not, because every specialization, it's a capitalist thing, right?
Right.
Like,
and it's also very true that especially when you're getting into like PhD level science, your area of expertise is so narrow.
Yeah.
And you have so much knowledge about that specific, exceptionally narrow area of expertise, you kind of don't know shit about anything else.
And you don't need to.
You don't need to, because you are not doing that science.
Yep.
It's not your area. It's not your field. You're not doing it.
And to flip the script on that, you're using terms that nobody else needs to understand. You're dealing with a language from yourself to your peers, and vice versa. And so outside of that sphere, the language doesn't always jive, doesn't make sense, doesn't track with what the rest of us are doing. And we don't need to. We don't need it.
You as a non-academic, non-scientist, essentially never need to actually understand raw research.
Yeah.
It's the people who are applying that research that need to understand it.
Yep. And so people in policy, people who work in areas where they bridge science and law together.
People who are using raw scientific knowledge to address engineering problems.
Yep.
They need to understand that. You don't. I don't. He doesn't.
Yeah. I can read the abstract often. I can muddle through a bit of it. I can sometimes get a gist of what the paper is saying. That's it.
Yeah,
that's my limit.
All any normal person needs is the abstract.
Yeah.
That gives you the hypotheses and the conclusions.
Yep.
And the data, how the data was gathered. Like, it's real simple. It's usually 2 or 3 paragraphs tops.
Yep. And sometimes they have an overview. Sometimes there's a conclusion section. Those are great.
There's always a summary at the end that's like literally a paragraph that explains everything in fairly easy to understand terms. There's some technical jargon in there, but they don't use it nearly as much, and it's a lot more just.
So skip the headlines. Stop putting, just stop. Don't politicize this bullshit. You don't need to. I don't need to. None of us need to. It's not necessary. Anytime you see a politician trying to, you should call them a liar.
Yeah.
Because they obviously don't know what they're talking about either.
Or at the very least, be suspect.
Yeah.
Of what they're saying. Don't just take it at face value because it confirms what you already want to believe.
Right. But yeah, that was a shit show. The Democrats, for the most part, did nothing.
Cowards. Worthless, feckless, useless cowards.
Put up a good fight. That was kind of the right thing. The best thing that was done was by AOC, who just didn't show up or give it the time of day.
Nope.
That's probably the best way to handle it. Just, no, go fuck yourself.
She watched it at home because she felt she had an obligation to the job to be aware of what he was saying, but she was not going to be there to lend any sort of credence to his position as president.
Yeah, and I bet she made a drinking game out of it or something.
I would have.
Like, sat around. I would have sat around smoking a bong and had a fucking bottle of Malort with me. And
I did what everyone should have done and just sang some karaoke.
Yeah. I would have, but
you were having a night.
I was having a night. I had to have emergency dental surgery. That was fun. 16 hours of excruciating pain. Don't ever get a hot tooth.
No,
Never.
it's bad.
It's bad.
It's bad.
Whew. All right. So if I sound a little weird, I have some fucking gauze and shit in there. Wonderful.
It's bad.
Yeah.
Anyone who hasn't experienced like a broken tooth or dental pain it's in your head. You can't think. It's all consuming until you get that fucker ripped out.
So when I had my wisdom teeth, lots of pain. When I had that broken tooth around the wisdom tooth area, like that was horrible. But this was a new thing because it was like so the infection was like right there at the base of the root and the bone, and it was like my mouth was on fire.
Yeah, I remember when my one molar broke and I had to have it out because there was an abscess that had gone down on my jaw. They had to put me on antibiotics for 72 hours before they could remove it.
Oof.
So it was just 3 days of waiting. After, it broke on a Friday afternoon. I couldn't get the appointment until Monday afternoon. And then I had to wait 3 days on antibiotics. It was like the following Thursday before I finally got it ripped out.
I couldn't imagine. This was horrific.
Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think.
Yeah, I had to have a constant stream of cold water, like sipping cold water for 16 hours because if I went more than seconds without it, my whole fucking head was on fire. And, it was bad.
This was in the relatively early days of COVID too.
Oh no!
So I was still working, but it was only 2 days a week. So I still had to work one day while I felt that way.
Oh no! Oh, yeah. God, that's awful.
Yeah,
that's
I don't recommend it.
No, I wouldn't. No, don't. Oof. But yeah, so I had a week. Let's see. But yeah, that speech, the Democrats, it was performative.
We wore pink and held signs.
Yay, this isn't normal. While they sat around normalizing it. You sat through that speech.
And then 10 of them voted to censure Al Green.
Yeah. Yeah. What the fuck? I was about to get to that. Like, Al Green gets censured.
If you live in one of their districts, I want you to primary them.
Who are the 10? Do you know any names that we know? Like anybody important? Or was it mostly nobody?
It seemed like mostly nobodies. It was not a single name I recognized.
All right. If you live in one of their districts,
primary them.
Primary them.
Hard. Even if you don't win, make them regret the fact that you felt the need to run against them.
Yeah, they shouldn't be able to go get a cup of coffee in your district without getting spit on.
Yeah.
They should be fucking booed out of society for existing. They shouldn't be able to feel safe in their district. I don't care. I'm not saying threaten them. I'm not. I'm saying do not let them feel safe in their districts. All 10 of them that voted to censure him.
The fact that essentially
make their lives hell.
Essentially every Democrat for the last 2 or 3 years has talked about how Trump was a fundamental threat to American democracy, how he was a fascist, and how he was going to destroy the United States, and everything they said was true, and they should fucking act like it now.
Right. The fact that they suddenly are acting as if everything they said just 3 months ago isn't as true today.
It's been justified. Everything they said has been proven to not be fear-mongering, and they act as if they never said it.
He's doing it faster and dumber and more haphazardly and more brazenly than they thought he would, than anyone thought he would. This is fast. This is like what we're going through is a lot like the Weimar playbook from the Republic to the
what
Third
it became,
Reich to what it became. It is in a lot of ways like that, but happening faster
and dumber
and dumber
and dumber.
And they're speed running the playbook in a haphazard and stupid way, and that is concerning. But what's more concerning is that the opposition party is acting as if what they said just 3-4 months ago
wasn't true. When it's only been proven more true than it seemed when they said it.
Right. And it's dangerous and dumb. And any Democrat from David fucking Axelrod, you feckless, cowardly piece of shit, to fucking...
I mean, I didn't like Axelrod originally.
Yeah. Like, I liked that he was a good strategist. He was good at getting things done in Obama 08.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'll give him that.
I didn't like him then, though.
I didn't like him, no. But, you know, at least he understood how to, like, run a big chunk of Obama's election then. But
well, he very much needs to understand that it is not 2008, 2009 anymore.
No, it is not. We are not in that time frame.
That was a long time ago.
And you see, he had the benefit of actually having the populist candidate at the time. Now, Obama may have been like a like blank vessel for like centrism that sounded populist progressive, right?
And people did project a lot of hopes onto him.
Right. But while he was that blank vessel, he was riding the populist wave, so he got the benefit of that. The Democrats don't have a populist wave happening right now. They don't have populism.
No, the lesson that they seem to be taking from this is we should be more right wing. That seems to be the lesson that a lot of them.
Yeah, we should be more right wing, and also let's just be more normal. Let's try to act as if this is still 2008, 2016.
We should decorum our way out of fascism.
Yeah.
If we're nice enough.
Do you know who's ever decorumed their way out of fascism?
I'm going to guess it's exactly fucking no one.
Exactly fucking no one. Yeah. Exactly. Right. Like,
there's 0% chance of decoruming your way out of fascism.
Like, the closest that's ever come was like the end of, you know, Franco's Spain and Pinochet's Chile, right?
Yeah.
And
I'd rather not
like
go
Perón,
through.
And the end of Perón's.
Right.
But
I'd
all
rather
three
not.
of those ended like in this slow, ugly, like oppositional. Like the administration was collapsing because they didn't have a next leader to run the fascist state, right?
Yeah,
and
that is a problem with fascism in general.
Yeah.
Like, fascism tends to be centered around one figure, and when that one figure is gone, that's the end of that specific movement. Like, there's no one who can replace Trump in MAGA.
Right. Like,
he's 78 years old. When he's gone, MAGA just sort of stops.
Yeah. Like, you know, the scary part about the Third Reich is that they had more than one figure behind Hitler, right? Now, Hitler did a good job of consolidating and forcing out other figures, etc.
Yeah.
But there were all these other strong power centers in the Reich, and there were individuals like Julius Streicher, right, who could have led the movement other than Hitler. And so, yeah, if he went away, the fascist state would have continued. It would have changed. It would have changed drastically.
I can't think of a fascist movement that has been more dependent upon one specific person
than
MAGA.
Yeah.
Like, it is purely a cult of personality around one man who is 78 years old. I would be much more concerned if Donald Trump were 58.
Yeah.
Because then we would be looking at 30 or 40 years of this.
Now, it does look like they're trying to coalesce it around Elon. And it looks like he might be like the next quasi-inheritor of like what's left of the populist movement among it. I don't think he's going to be as successful.
No.
He's not going to be as scary. But he's got this weird cult of personality fan base. He has brought on the whole that whole crazy tech bro Elon stan movement that existed has come over to MAGA, right?
Yeah.
And
I will never forgive Marvel for letting him cameo in Iron Man 2.
Yeah, that was some
that might have done more damage.
Oh, And him paying to get name dropped in Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah, that was pathetic.
Though it is really funny because when you realize it, so in Discovery, if you haven't watched Star Trek Discovery, the guy who name dropped him as like one of the geniuses of spaceflight,
Yes.
happened to be from the evil fascist mirror universe.
Secretly.
Yeah, he was secretly from
Secret mirror universe bad guy.
And he goes, your name will be in history like Zephyrin Cochrane and Elon Musk. And you're like,
Are we? Dude, are we the mirror universe?
I think we are.
Fuck. Are we? God damn it.
I think.
I don't want to live in the mirror universe.
Oh my God. Actually,
I don't want to live in the mirror universe.
okay. So all right, if we have other Star Trek stands out there in the fan base, I mean, our fan base, like, the 20 to 70 of you who watch our shit, we get thousands of TikTok views.
Yeah.
Great. Love you guys. More of you need to subscribe, by the way, fuckers.
Yeah.
But for our fans out there who, if any of them are Star Trek fans, because my knowledge of Star Trek lore is fairly deep, but I mean, I have my flaws.
Well, there's only so much we can know about the mirror universe.
Right.
As far as I'm aware.
But my question...
I haven't read any of the books.
Right.
It might be in the novels.
Yeah, so... But timeline-wise, this is kind of lining up that we might be the mirror universe.
All I know is the not mirror universe had a Bell Riot, and we haven't.
Right, we haven't had a Bell Riot.
I also seem to recall... Was it 97 when, like, the wars started?
Yeah, but here's the thing is that, all right, so Picard kind of changes up. Like, the funny thing is like the later shows, like Discovery, Picard, etc., right? Mm-hmm. They seem to have, like, adjusted the timeline a little bit. Like, updated it, modernized it. And I have a feeling that, like, one, obviously, since Roddenberry was doing that whole sci-fi thing of, like, like, forgetting that only projecting a few decades into the future, like, will catch up to you pretty quick.
Yeah, you got to do at least 100 years.
Right. You got to do at least 100 years.
At least 100. 200's better.
Yeah. 200 or more is better.
And it's also really easy to forget that technology has this kind of, like, punctuated equilibrium to it where there's these super advancements and then it stalls for a while.
Right. Yeah. So...
And you don't see, like, real major shifts.
Exactly. So, like, Star Trek, like, didn't predict a bunch of technology. It created a bunch of hope in possible technologies that other people went and created. Right.
Sort of self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. So the technology kind of caught up in some ways on some of the items, right? But yeah, so it seems like the timeline kind of like expanded out a little bit in later shows.
Considering
like that they spread it out.
Considering
a few
that
decades.
they didn't have touchscreens in the late 22nd century.
Yep. And then all of a sudden they did in the next shows because they were like, oh yeah, shit,
we
touchscreens.
are like 300 years ahead of the Star Trek universe in that regard.
Well, yes and no, because TNG caught it up a little bit.
Right, but still.
Yeah. Because they realized that touchscreens were like right around the corner in like 1988. Like, and they were like, oh shit, we should.
Man, it is fun to go back and look at the old fucking TOS fucking
knobs and
bridges,
knobs and dials
and fucking levers
and like your fucking screen viewer from like
it's
like
a ViewMaster.
Yeah, it's a ViewMaster. Like it's oh god. But yeah, I think we might be in the timeline of the mirror universe.
Cool.
Yeah, and based on Picard, that story arc was all about ice. Leading to Picard being a fascist dictator.
Cool.
In like generations in the future, like like an ice plot line, like leading to like American fascism taking over the globe.
Neat.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
I'm real excited.
Khan Union Singh.
Oh fuck.
But I do kind of want genetically engineered Ubermensch. I'm not gonna lie.
They're just gonna suck.
They're gonna suck, but
they're just gonna suck. It's not gonna be any goddamn. They're gonna be fucking assholes.
They probably will. All right. God, so
bullshit.
that was a big long derailment, but it was fun.
So here's some news. That I just saw right before we started. You got here.
Okay.
Trump had a cabinet meeting today.
Oh no!
And
oh, no.
he made a point to inform that all of his cabinet members that Elon actually doesn't have the power to fire anyone. He can only make recommendations to the heads of the various departments, and then they will do as they see fit based on those recommendations. So Elon Musk, according to Donald Trump, cannot fire anyone on his own.
You know what's really funny about this? Like, all right, so
had to have a whole cabinet meeting just to explain that to his cabinet that Elon can't just fire people.
I mean, we know why.
Yeah.
We know exactly. So yesterday, so remember 2 nights ago there was that shit show fucking speech, this non-State of the Union, and during it, Trump said that Musk was in charge of Doge.
I put him in charge. I created Doge.
Yep.
And I put him in charge.
And said that Musk was explicitly in charge of Doge and doing all that work. And the following fucking morning, a absolutely like already pre-typed up with like a blank space waiting for the quote, like filing hit like first thing in the morning and accusing the government of perjury. Why?
They lied.
Because they repeatedly, in filings, said that Elon Musk was not in charge of Doge and had no official role or power or capacity to try to, like, you know, get around some of these lawsuits and claiming that Doge wasn't doing what it was doing and that it was just the agencies and all this nonsense. Because an unelected, unappointed, unconfirmed, unaccountable individual operating at or above the cabinet level,
can't do that.
It's super unconstitutional and super illegal. Like, duh. And so they kept saying that, no, this isn't, he doesn't have that power, whatever. And filing after filing, like 20 times so far, right?
Yes.
Like
many times.
Many times. And the president went on live television and basically said that wasn't true. Like, that he has this power. And then the following day, today,
and
he has to have a cabinet meeting where he has to clarify, well, actually, we didn't really mean that. That's fun.
It's
going to cause some more conflict and fighting, because, like, Musk's going to go around doing things and making fucking orders and tweeting stuff and threatening people.
It is important for everyone to realize that in terms of actual, real legal powers, Elon Musk has none.
Yeah.
It's also important to realize that executive orders are not laws.
Correct.
They are just the executive branch explaining how they intend to enforce specific laws and regulations.
But when there's a major conflict between that EO and the law should take precedent. At least it did up until recently. But yeah, that all stems from, like, you remember Musk just a couple of days ago was tweeting about how, all of these federal employees refused to send him that email, and that they were even encouraged by their managers not to, and that basically they should all be fired, and he's going to get rid of them all, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, you're creating confusion here because you don't have this legal authority. So why are you even asking?
Right.
Like, and then you're creating a mess where you look like you have the legal authority. People under you kind of sort of do because they've been given, like, appointments like that are dual. It's this weird, like, this guy works for Doge but also has been appointed as, like, the number 3 at OPM, right?
Yeah.
And so
Big Balls is at the State Department now.
Yeah. So they're all being put into these, like, upper mid-level positions, these non-confirmed, just under confirmation positions, and then running roughshod. But it's actually, like, the cabinet member that really is the boss there. It's a fucking mess.
Yeah.
But again, very Third Reich-like. A lot of this operated that way, where there were these competing power bases, and, like, they consolidated a bunch of power, and then a handful of individuals within the Reich were, like, in charge of their own individual sphere, all gearing towards, like, the will of the Fuhrer, right? Mm-hmm. Which was what their main objective was, but individually, it was their individual power sphere. And I think that's how this is kind of breaking out, and it's going to break out over time, where that leads in that direction. Terrifyingly as that is. But it's fun. I mean, the cabinet meeting.
It was something.
Speaking of Trump, so he's delaying some tariffs on Mexico and Canada for 1 month, mostly
Again?
Yeah, again. Mostly easing them up on Mexico, leaving more of them in place on Canada, but easing up some of them.
Well, I know the auto industry was freaked out.
Yeah, this also looks very much like an inside trader's wet dream.
Yeah,
like,
you announce tariffs, you crash the market, you sell high, you rebuy low, You say the tariffs are rescinded, the market goes back up, you make more money. It's all a grift. It's all a con.
Yeah. And this looks like his insiders, those billionaires that are like that chief weird like inner circle. What was it, like 20 of them? They're all fucking together worth like $2 trillion, right?
Yeah.
Like it looks like they are all big market movers right now. And every single time one of these things gets announced, and every time, like, it's not every single product, it's not every single industry, but it's big whole swaths of their economies, right? Mm-hmm. And they announce it, the market takes a hit, and then there's a wave of buying when it's down 1 to 5%, as the overall market's down 1 to 5%, but specific stocks are down like 8, 10, 15, 20%. Massive hits. They're getting snatched up. And then he rescinds it 2 days later, 3 days later, 5 days later.
Stock market bounces back to almost where it was before.
Yep. And all of those stocks that they bought low are back up to normal. So they're making.
Oh my God! I just realized that. Well, we recorded. The last time we recorded was last Thursday.
Yeah.
The Zelensky meeting was the following day.
That's right.
We haven't talked about that yet.
Holy shit, that's right.
Because, holy shit, so much is happening so fast. It felt like it was months ago.
And as the podcast gods are wont to do, they are bastards.
They are dicks.
They're dicks.
They are dicks.
If you record about a topic, and it's like something important to the topic you're recording.
Yeah.
As you are either recording or the day you're dropping it, you will have a piece of news that hits and fucks up or adds to or changes the dynamic of everything you talked about immediately, every time.
I am fairly certain that it would have been impossible for someone to watch the entirety of the last episode when it premiered at noon before what happened.
Yeah.
You couldn't have watched the entire hour and 40-minute episode before what happened.
Yeah, because they were happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
So yeah, we record on Thursdays, we edit, and we drop it so that it goes live on noon on Fridays.
Right. We used to have a bigger difference. We used to record on Sundays, and then things happened too fast to do that. We really realized we needed a faster turnaround.
We were way behind on the news every week, and that wasn't good. So we changed it to this format, hoping that 24 hours is not going to... I mean, not even 24 hours. It's like 22 hours, right?
Yeah.
Or no, 21 hours. 21 hours in between, like, going live, like, recording and going live. So we got 21 hours in between. We figure, we got this. No. We're gonna get that Oval Office meeting from hell.
So we talked all about the pros and the cons. Mostly the pros of having the post World Order that we had until noon last Friday.
Exactly, because you know what? When things normalize a little bit, or like we get some breathing room, and we're not just focused on how terrible everything is all the time with Trump. I want to talk more about like historic things, like the Dulles brothers, etc. Like the role of U.S. fruit in Chiquita, and like how the word Banana Republic even came to be. I want to talk about that stuff.
All of the ways in which we got here over the last 100 years.
Yes, I would love to talk about that stuff, and that will really shit on some of the things about the neoliberal post-war order, right? But I want to, while we're dealing with the dumpster fire. That is the post-war order burning down, I'd like to talk about the parts of it that are valuable and worth saving. So that's what we did.
And that's mostly the stability that it brought to the Western world.
Exactly. And in some parts, the rest of the world stemming from that.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
In some, again, as individual cases may vary, I am not supporting genocides, wars, conflicts, stripping of resources, colonialism, none of that.
Right, but outside of specific areas and specific situations, overall, globally, things are substantially better now than they were 50 years ago.
Right.
Across the board.
Yes. And
with very specific outliers notwithstanding.
Right. And that is mostly due to globalization, global trade, which has been facilitated by the Western post-war hegemonic order that the U.S. is at the center of. That's it. Whether or not you like that, and again, specific terrible things involved, we can talk about, and we will. I plan to.
Yeah.
But for now, let's talk about the stability and the good parts, because
It's gone.
it's gone.
It's gone. It's done now.
It's burning down, and we're about to lose that.
We are going to find out exactly how valuable or not valuable that stability was.
Yeah.
We're going to learn together whether or not it was important.
Isn't it great? I mean, I personally thought it was, but
The United States, under Donald
Fucked
Trump, we are being set on a course of total economic isolation from the global economy and geopolitically being an international pariah state.
yeah. And
Neither of which we've been before.
No. Like the closest we came was that weird period of isolationism in like the late 1800s. After this, like in early 1900s. But it wasn't even all that. Like again,
which is funny you mentioned that, because that was partially when his Donald Trump's favorite president and hero was in the Oval Office, McKinley. McKinley, who ushered in the Gilded Age in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and other than that, he was just kind of there. Like, he was an asshole.
Yeah.
He ushered in the Gilded Age. Nobody really pays much attention to his presidency.
No, I mean, honestly, up until Trump's weird fetishization of him, I think he was probably only known for Mount McKinley.
Yeah, and getting whacked, right?
Yeah.
Was he assassinated?
I can't remember. I think he was.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all people know. I don't know shit about McKinley's presidency, except that, like, in part, he was responsible for the Gilded Age starting.
Right.
That's it. I haven't even dug all that deep into it.
He was really into isolationism and imperialism, which is an interesting combination.
Well, you don't need trade when you've got a military, right?
Yeah.
That's seems to be what these assholes think. And that's how you get to fascist autocracies taking over their neighbors. Oh, wait. Again, more weird Third Reich allegories.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Who knew?
All right. So yeah, we got the insider trading bonanza that is this constant trade war threat. But this is going to lead to a point where instead of, like, we're going to threaten tariffs, they're going to hit us with retaliatory tariffs, and then we're going to pull back, and they're not.
They're just not. They're just going to cut us off.
Yeah, like,
We're just going to be economically isolated. And I would fucking love someone to explain to me how being economically isolated from the global economy, when the global economy is the only economy, is beneficial for the United States. I would love to understand how that works, because not a goddamn person has been able to explain it to me yet.
No.
In even an unsatisfactory fashion. Most people won't answer the question when I ask it.
yeah. So, and again, this is, like, I don't understand people like I just don't understand people. But I don't understand people like my stepfather. A couple things about him. Like, when I was a kid, like, I got a lot of my values from him, and I don't recognize him anymore as far as the values go that he taught me politically. Like, we never agreed politically eye to eye on many things, but on some core, like, underlying, like, values we did. And
it used to seem that values could be separated from politics.
Right. But, he was a George H.W. guy, right?
Okay.
He hated Carter for making him vote for Reagan. Right? That's how he felt.
Okay.
Like, because he couldn't vote for Carter. He wanted George H.W., right? And was mad at Carter for having to vote for Reagan.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and now that election was about which one of them could be better to immigrants. Mm-hmm. They were both pro-global trade.
Yeah.
Right? One of them just had that whole voodoo trickle-down economics bullshit. And the other, was a standard...
Skeptical of that.
The other was skeptical of that, and the standard neo-Keynesian, right? Like, so...
In a lot of ways, George H.W. Bush in 1980 is a modern Democrat.
Yeah.
Basically. I mean, that's what Bill Clinton turned the party into.
Right.
The George H.W. Bush 1980 Republican Party.
Yeah, and Rockefeller stuff, because Rockefeller was a little to the left of George H.
Well, I mean, there used to be moderate and left-leaning Republicans.
Yep.
In my lifetime. In our lifetimes.
Yeah.
They existed. The party didn't go completely off the rails till Gingrich.
Yeah, and Gingrich it took him 6 years to really force out all the old ones. But so, like, he was a George H.W. guy, and he approved of George H.W.'s like view on foreign policy, which was like this stabilizing Cold Warrior, like hawkish but not volatile, like, just staunch, all about order. The West is good, dictator's bad.
Right.
Like, that's how we roll.
Projecting strength through proxy wars, not direct military action.
Yep. And that trade was the core like way of solving the problem, right? That was the guy that raised me, right? And now he's just down the MAGA rabbit hole too. Like, we never talk politics and post a lot, but it's there, and it's like kooky, and it's like, but it's like, yo, you were the operations manager and head engineer for a electric motor company that makes boat motors, that makes them in several countries outside of the U.S. and gets parts internationally, and like 3 to 6 times a year, he would spend like 1 to 6 weeks at a time in China and South Korea and Brazil, right?
Like sourcing parts
and dealing with factories and like, meeting with executives at factories and all that jazz, right? Like, that was his life for 20 some odd years. How does he all of a sudden hate global trade?
It's weird how trade is inherently mutually beneficial.
Right.
One side has a good, they exchange that good for money, and then vice versa. The other side has other goods that this side doesn't, and they exchange goods for money. It's trade is mutually beneficial. This weird idea that has developed over the last several years, that it is a zero-sum game with you are either a winner or a loser. You are either a bully or the bullied. It's fucking wild.
It's wild. It's dumb. It seems to always come down to like weird nationalist and or racial lines, right? And at the end of the day, like, it's dumb. And what's really dumb about it is that this nonsense was a losing argument that was like I'm going to be forever mad at the left for having this position in the 80s, right? The isolationist left union fucking position, right? Because, they wanted their jobs protected, right? I could kind of understand why they wanted it. It was dumb then.
Right.
But how that infected like the middle working class in America is beyond me, because it's dumb and it's hurtful, and
it's especially dumb when you look at a lot of the foreign nations where jobs went in the 80s, or the foreign ownership that took place in the 80s. They tended to also be countries that on their own, in their own countries, have stronger than us labor rights.
Yeah, except maybe Japan, but Japan is a weird culture where they made a lot of money anyways, even if their labor rights sucked, right? Like, it's like the Japanese economy, like, they have houses and fucking cars and fucking consumerism and all that other bullshit.
The Germans weren't going to come in and destroy your labor rights.
Yeah, no, fuck no, they weren't. Like, like, it was dumb then, and it's dumb now. But yeah, so I don't understand it. I don't get the change. I don't get the shift. I would love to pick his brain about it, but like,
you can't.
I can't, and I really don't want to. I don't want to put myself in a position where I have to look at my parents and be like, I can't anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I get it.
I can't have the conversation. I would love to.
I'm glad I don't have to deal with that.
Yeah.
My dad's cool. He's 86.
But
one of my earliest memories was him just being angry that Reagan won re-election in 84.
Nice.
I remember having a conversation on the bus in that must have been kindergarten.
Right.
Going to school, and I was talking to like one of the older kids, and we were talking about who our parents were voting for, because that was something we knew at that age.
Right.
And we were the only two on the bus whose parents hated Ronald Reagan in 1984.
Nice.
I don't even remember who that kid. I don't remember who she was, but I just remember we bonded over that. She was like 2-3 years older than me.
Love it. Fucking love it. All right, what else we got in the news?
Probably a Trump voter now.
Fuck. You're never wrong. Trump won't sign the executive order to dissolve the Department of Education today. He was going to today, but apparently he's not going to sign it today.
Cool.
This one This is disturbing and angering. Trump to revoke legal status for 240,000 Ukrainians as the U.S. steps up deportations.
As we smuggle the Tate brothers back into the United States and into Florida.
Did you see Trump said he knew nothing about that?
That's interesting because wasn't it on his private jet that they flew into the U.S.?
That was the reporting. Now, I haven't gotten it confirmed, but I saw the reporting, and it was a journalist that was like,
at a minimum, it would have had to have been through State Department liaisons that they were allowed to leave Romania to come to the U.S. This is the sort of thing that would have to be negotiated.
Yeah, they were let out of prison.
They were let out of prison and allowed to leave the country while facing criminal charges.
Yeah,
for sex trafficking.
Some shit happened there, and it doesn't seem that it was just like the Romanians all of a sudden got like a conscience and we're like, oh, these guys.
No, I mean, because
you're being we're hurting you.
So remember, Andrew Tate first went to Romania to do all this shit because it was the place he was least likely to get in trouble for it.
Yeah, he knew that their laws were really lax and their enforcement wasn't great.
He still got arrested and was facing prosecution.
The funny thing is like the way he talked about it, like it really offended Romania, like their criminal and legal system, because they're like, hey, look, we do take this seriously. We just like we don't have a bunch of these weird, like, track everything on the internet laws.
If he weren't an arrogant, weird narcissist, he'd have gotten away with it.
Yeah, more than likely. Because Romania does take it seriously, but only once it hits a certain bar, right?
Yeah.
And he decided to be weirdly arrogant about it and hit that bar.
He
full speed.
He decided to make it something that the rest of the world was paying attention to.
Yep.
And that put Romania in a position where they felt they did not have a choice to do anything but prosecute to the fullest extent of what their laws are.
Exactly. And
now he's living in Florida.
Yeah, but so we get that. Let's circle back because we skipped accidentally the meeting. We talked about it, but that meeting.
That was I have felt a lot of things over my 46 years as an American. I have felt anger, annoyance, disgust, disappointment.
Yeah.
I've never been truly embarrassed before. That was embarrassing.
That was
embarrassing. Even when W was blundering his way through the early days of the war on terror, I at least understood why what was happening was happening.
Sure. That makes sense. I mean,
I got it. I didn't agree with it. I knew it was bad policy. I knew there was going to be blowback. I knew that
chain of events led to the other.
I understood how we got there.
Yeah.
And I understood why people were willing to support it.
Right.
I got that. Like, I fully understand why in the week after 9/11, his approval rating was 93%.
Yeah.
I get it. And the whole fucking world rallied around us.
Yeah. Like,
there were people in Iran, like, marching on our behalf.
Right. Even the Iranians, like, were like, oh no.
Yeah.
Like we got like an official like condolences message from the fucking Ayatollah then.
Yeah. And this was when Ahmadinejad was still president, right?
Yeah.
Like he was probably the most belligerent to U.S. interests Iranian president since the revolution.
Yeah. Like, now, mind you, he wanted to be a moderate, but like he needed to be a belligerent to like get the fucking religious authorities off his ass.
Yeah, because he was not on the religious side of the revolution when he participated in the revolution.
Yeah, which
it's really easy to forget how messy that revolution was and how different factions really fucking did not like each other.
Also, just for those who like stand like the Trump like ending the Iran nuclear deal, etc. nonsense. What we forget is that any time that relations between Iran and the West and the Iranian economy are in a good position, their political secular leadership is more powerful, gets stronger. And any time that they get isolated and that their economy is in a rough spot, that the West is barreling down on them with like threats and it looks like they might be getting closer to war, their religious leadership gets more powerful. It's the tension fundamentally within Iran every time. And we should be doing more to foster normalization with them.
I can't remember his name, but whoever became president after Ahmadinejad early on in Obama's first term, he was the most moderate Iranian president that they've had since they've had presidents.
And that's we continuously forget this, but that's the tension dynamic there. Is every time things are starting to normalize with the West and they're getting a little bit less tense, less isolated, their economy starts to improve. It doesn't look like, you know, the U.S. or Israel or fucking our allies are going to fucking blow them up. Their secular government gets stronger, right? And the fundamental tension between the secular and religious power centers in Iran balances towards the secular, which we want.
Right.
If we actually want to achieve what are supposed to be the general goals of the U.S. and that we say we want and that our population say we want out of Iran, the best thing we can do is continually support the improvement of Iran, like as far as their normalization with the rest of the world and the strengthening of their economy, etc. Right? Like, because every time we don't, their religious nut jobs get stronger. Just that was my side.
Yeah.
Let's go back to this. So, that meeting.
Yes.
Holy shit.
I'm going to say that meeting did not go off the rails, truly off the rails, till the first time J.D. Vance opened his fucking mouth.
Yeah.
And that very much felt like J.D. Vance trying to make himself important because he's not.
And trying to ambush.
Zelensky. And
Trump immediately jumping to his defense, though, it looked it looked a bit staged.
Yeah.
It looked like they were ready. That was obviously, like, they had some discussion before that moment.
Yeah.
Right? And so here's what we get.
I think they expected Zelensky to just sort of like cave to their bullying.
Right. And get yelled at on TV and
which tells me
push back.
They have not paid any attention to anything about him in the last 4 years.
No. And the thing is that what they want out of him isn't helpful and isn't going to fly. The Ukrainians, like, you can't force Zelensky to take a deal that the deal that the U.S. wants.
Right.
Because, like, if Zelensky starts to take it, somebody in his own government is going to put a bullet in his head, and the Ukrainian people are still going to keep fighting on.
Yeah.
Like, it's like the polling is something like 60-70% do not want any version of a deal that looks like this.
This is
you
true.
You can't make this happen.
This is true of the MAGA right and a huge segment of the left.
Mm-hmm.
There is no set of circumstances under which you can justify Russia invading Ukraine.
No. None.
Russia invaded Ukraine.
Uh-huh.
They violated, like, I'm someone who doesn't give a shit about countries or borders in general.
But I do care about the sovereignty of them.
We have countries. We have borders.
Yep.
They are a fundamental and vitally important part of the current global order.
Yep.
You don't get to just violate them.
Right. And
you don't get to just invade your neighbors for any reason. It's like, oh, there are Nazis there. Okay, there are Nazis here. Is Canada going to invade?
Yeah. Like, I don't believe in territorial borders in so much as, like, if the United States and Canada decided, let's just get rid of this thing between us and like let our people just go back and forth and goods go back and forth.
If there was,
without
I could see there being something akin to the European Union under better circumstances with better leadership, a North American Union akin to the European Union, free movement amongst all the countries.
Yeah, so that's
free trade amongst all the countries.
Right.
Probably using the dollar as the unifying currency across all countries.
I could see that.
I could totally see that, and that'd probably be beneficial for every last one of these countries.
Exactly, and I wouldn't give a shit about those borders then, but I do care about like what, like, you know, like who is administering, like, you know, like, what set of laws do we operate under in this space, right?
You don't just get to go to another country and say, your land is our land now, and you don't have a say in it.
Exactly. And so
I don't care what country you are.
So
and I'm going to say this about the left. A lot of you motherfuckers only hate American imperialism.
Oh, yeah.
You don't hate imperialism. No. You hate American imperialism. You are perfectly okay with anyone else doing it.
Your America bad brain rot is a big fucking problem, and
you need to get the fuck over it.
It needs to get fixed.
You need to get the fuck over it.
So let's scale back to the 90s, right?
Okay.
1990s, Ukraine is sitting on a bunch of nuclear weapons that the Soviets had left there. Now, they didn't have the command and control infrastructure, but here's the thing.
They had just a stockpile.
Yep, here's the thing. It was
the largest, right?
Yeah.
They had the largest number out of all the former Soviet states.
Right. outside of Russia.
Outside,
yeah.
well, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so they had this big stockpile of nuclear weapons. Now, couple of things. It would not have been impossible for Ukraine to have developed or repurposed them to have had their own command and control systems. Right. People have a bad tendency of thinking, well, without the command and control, they were completely useless. I'm like,
you can figure that out.
Yeah, they were useless for a while. Like, but you have functional warheads.
Here's the thing.
You just need to change
if you have
the device that controls them.
If you have access to nuclear warheads and you do not know how to deliver them, you will find a way to figure out how to deliver them.
Yeah. But they had everything they needed. They had the warhead. They had the rockets, right? Mm-hmm. They had, like, the systems to launch them. Right. They just didn't have the electronics to do it and to send them off. That would have been something solvable.
Really easily solvable.
Yes. It may have taken them a decade, sure.
But then they would have had the largest stockpile of nuclear weapons outside of Russia, the United States.
Yep. I think they would have been like third in the world, fourth.
Yeah.
So like fourth. Like
they would have been one of the greatest nuclear powers.
Yes. They'd be up there in the top 7 with France, the UK, China, and us. Like, that would have made them fucking Central European micro superpower.
They would be a global power now.
Yep. But the problem, I mean, it's a couple of them, is that their country was at that point not stable because it was the post-Soviet collapse. And like they were redeveloping their national identity because we scale way back in time. Ukraine has had a national identity since before Russia existed.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
like, it's weird. Like, fuck you, people who don't think that like there's a Ukrainian identity. It's that they've had a long one. It's a long history, and that it's certain periods, the Tsar and then later Stalin decided that they didn't want Ukrainian identities anymore and started to suppress them, right? But Ukraine had its own language, its own identity, its own concept, its own statehood for fucking before the Soviet Union existed.
Kyiv has been a city for like 1,200 years.
Yeah, and like
there were no Russians.
Right. The Kiev Rus founded Russia.
Yeah.
Like, you know, this is fucking crazy. But
Ukrainians would have more of a claim on the entirety of Russia than Russia has claim on Ukraine.
Yeah. So
if that's how you want to do it,
right? But we don't do it that way
because that's stupid and counterproductive.
So, but 90s, they get this big stockpile. The U.S. and the former Soviet Union, and Russia at that point, like
understand this is a problem.
Yes. And the Ukrainians really don't want them, but they also don't want to give them up. Like they don't want them,
right?
But they don't want to get rid of them because they have just gotten away from the Soviet Union,
right?
And they know that like this is a big fucking bargaining chip,
yeah,
and it's a giant safety thing. And they know
also
what like they went through World War II,
and
they got carved up.
It
right?
was if you weren't there for it, it's hard to appreciate how destabilizing and how much uncertainty the collapse of the Soviet Union created.
Yes, so much.
Like we cheered it here. Oh, we won the Cold War. It's the end of history.
Yeah, but anybody who was paying attention also knew that there were all these little moments where the potential to end the world was happening.
Yeah, you didn't know. Had no idea who was going to take over these countries in the absence of the Soviet Union and what they were going to do with having a dozen new major nuclear powers.
Yep. And so we got to enjoy that whole like end of history moment, but anybody here who was paying some attention, and like fuck, I was in middle and high school, but I was still like
was it 90?
Like, yeah, so you get like,
89 when the wall came down.
89 wall comes down.
It was like 91 when the Soviet Union collapsed, I believe.
So you get that like soft coup.
So yeah, I was 12.
Yeah, you get that soft coup. Gorbachev like is like put under house arrest for a couple of days. They try to like things just start spiraling.
I remember
92 is really it starts to domino. Like
I remember,
it was a period. It was a process. It wasn't an overnight thing.
And things were changing so fast. I remember my school being told that we were not going to update the maps again until the following school year
Yeah.
Because they were changing so fast. And those big-ass pull-down world maps were fucking expensive.
Right?
They were hundreds of dollars a piece, and they were out of date, like, weekly.
Yeah, and then, I mean, because, like 9 years, 10 years later, after the wall goes down, 10 years later, like, there's a NATO mission in, the former Yugoslavia.
Yugoslavia collapses.
Yugoslavia collapses. Like,
Czechoslovakia collapses.
You got Kosovo becoming a country. You've got Serbia. You got, like, this is just, in Bosnia, it's all just...
It's really easy to forget as an American living in the United States and how prosperous things were here, how globally tumultuous the 90s were.
Yep. And that could have been a really dangerous period of time, and we all knew it. Wow. And so Ukraine's got this giant stockpile of nuclear weapons in the time when everything's kind of falling apart around them, and they could be going into a civil war or get invaded by a neighbor or go to war with a neighbor, or Russia could decide they want to take them back.
You could have had other Soviet satellite states deciding they were going to be the new imperial power in the region.
Yep.
Started gobbling up their neighbors.
Any of these things could have happened. So Ukraine wanted to fix that problem, and the Budapest Memorandum happens, and they negotiate a deal where the United States and Russia agree to security guarantees and Ukrainian sovereignty.
Yeah.
In exchange for giving up the nukes.
Right. Which they wanted to do anyway.
Yep.
Like, this was a win-win for us and the Soviet and Russia. I shouldn't say the Soviets, but Russia. And this was mutually beneficial for both of us and the Ukrainians.
Yeah, because Ukraine got its sovereignty and got to get rid of its nukes and got promises by the two superpowers that if either one of them invaded or tried to take over, it would lead to a war. Right.
It was one of the very rare instances where every single one of the parties in a trilateral agreement came out ahead. Every single one of them. It was purely beneficial across the board.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
Weird. I think he's doing that thing. Anyway, so yeah, it was a great, a great deal. And what happens? Prosperity. Ukraine continues on its course until Russia decides it wants to be an asshole. They have, a series of corrupt presidents that try to basically sell them out to Russia.
Yeah.
Over and over again. They got mass protests. They oust Yanukovych.
In 2014. And it's important to remember, Yanukovych was ousted, and the internal revolution in Ukraine took place in 2014.
Yep.
Because you will have people lie to you and say that he was kicked out of office and immediately replaced with Zelensky. Zelensky did not become president until 2019. That was 5 years later.
They'll tell you Zelensky wasn't elected, that he came into power in a coup.
Right.
Like, it's nonsense.
No. Yanukovych was forced out and new elections were held.
Yep. And he was forced out. He wasn't even really, you could, if you squint and twist your head and look at it very funny.
He was forced to leave office.
Yeah. You could call it a coup, but it wasn't. Right? He was forced to leave office.
Following that logic, every time a corrupt political leader is forced out of office by his own people, it's a coup.
Yeah.
And that's just silly.
Right.
Nobody believes that. Not in good faith.
The military didn't take over. The government didn't collapse and then take over from underneath him.
The corrupt president was forced out of office.
Yes. Unanimous parliamentary vote by his own party. Massive protests.
It was the equivalent of an impeachment.
Yes. And
it's a little messier, but the equivalent of impeachment from a legal perspective.
Yep. And then they found that he had stolen millions and millions of dollars with the help of a guy named Paul Manafort.
Yeah.
We forget about him, don't we?
I haven't.
Yeah, but
I wish I could.
Right? Paul Manafort was deeply involved in all that bullshit and robbing Ukraine blind. So he'd taken millions of dollars and stolen it from Ukraine and taken money from Russia, lots of it, and was a corrupt motherfucker. So, but 5 years later, Zelensky is elected to office.
And, he was... It's because the wind's blowing and it's moving the fucking screen.
It was weirding me out. I'm turn it down a little bit so it's not as bright. I don't know. But so, sorry. So Zelensky didn't come in a coup.
He was elected.
He was elected in 2019?
2019.
2019, yeah.
2019.
So he's elected in 2019. Now, Russia invaded and took Crimea in 2014, immediately after Yanukovych is ousted. Not in 2016, not in 2017, not in 2018, not in 2020. No. 2014. The breakaway territories, Donbass and
and if you want to ascribe some blame there, like Obama could have been a lot harder on Putin at that point than he was.
He could have. He could have, should have, would have done more.
Right.
That's absolutely a big, like, Obama doing nothing for Georgia in 2010.
Yeah.
I think was a big part of it.
We just forget that Russia has had a history over the last 20 years of invading and trying to take over its neighbors.
Mm-hmm. Or just using military force to force their neighbors to capitulate temporarily.
Yeah.
They did it in Belarus. They did it in Chechnya. They've done it in Georgia. Like a full-scale invasion in Georgia, like that they technically won, but they also ran into some big problems with like supply lines and everything else. And that is a running theme for the modern Russian military. Yeah. And so like they ran into a lot of problems in that invasion. Like they won because it was short and it was fast, and like the Georgians didn't have the strength to really put up a fight.
Why they felt confident in being able to do the same thing to Ukraine. I mean, it was supposed to be a weekend war.
But they also had some weird supply line problems and some other issues that, like, you know, it should have been a signal that they shouldn't have.
Kyiv was supposed to fall in less than 100 hours.
Yeah, they had a 3-day.
It's been 3 years.
Yeah, like it's been 3 years, and while they initially took a bunch of territory, Ukraine has been fairly successful in a bunch of counteroffensives, and like
they've even taken some territory back.
Yeah, taken territory back, took territory in Russia temporarily,
and
have struck as far as fucking Moscow with drones. Like,
and I know that like I know that the reason the United States is no longer supporting Ukraine, and we are rescinding our support, is because Vladimir Putin wants us to.
I think that. I also think that Trump, his dumb, petty, vindictive, egocentric side.
Yeah, he's still mad at Zelensky for not going after Biden in 2020.
When he tried to do a quid pro quo for withholding congressionally authorized funds for Ukraine, if he didn't try to gin up and fake a prosecution against Joe Biden, like, if he didn't do that to help him win an election.
Which was the reason he got impeached the first time doing that.
Yes, his first impeachment, he was impeached. The man was impeached.
It's basically on the grounds of impoundment.
Yeah, for stealing or withholding withholding funds and trying to trade them in a quid pro quo for political gain.
Right.
And now he is punishing that same person and their whole country
for not caving.
The first time. Yeah.
The first time.
Because that embarrassed him.
It's just petty revenge.
Petty revenge. And it's because it's what Putin wants.
It's what Putin wants. And I'll say this. I do not think it was a good move on Putin's part.
No.
I first of all, the fact that they seemed genuinely surprised that in the absence of U.S. support, the entirety of Europe just decided we're going to do this ourselves instead.
Yeah.
The fact that they seemed surprised by this blows me away. And I'll say this. If there's one thing that being supported by Europe is going to do for Ukraine, that being supported the United States didn't do, is it's not going to constrain them in the same ways.
No, it's not.
There were things Ukraine could not get away with doing inside of Russia while we were the ones primarily supporting them. I know Poland's going to be totally gung-ho about them doing now.
Yeah, the U.S. was spending a lot of time and energy trying to make Ukraine, like, do this war slowly. And
make it purely defensive, with no offensive measures whatsoever.
And we kept getting a little bit upset at them every time they took, like, an offense too far.
Right.
And it's like, here's the thing. They're in a war.
The people who share a continent with Russia are not going to worry about constraining them.
No, if anything, making sure that when this is over with, Russia is as small and battered and crippled and incapable of starting another war again as possible. The better.
The goal when the United States was supporting Ukraine was for Ukraine to maintain its sovereignty. The goal now is for Russia to fall.
Yeah, and they need it. Here's the thing: is they need Russia to fall. If you're Germany, if you're Finland, if you're Sweden, Britain, France, any of them, you need Russia to fall because they're showing that they are irredentist, that they have imperial ambitions outside their borders, that the dictator in charge wants to destabilize the world order, right? That he's going to utilize his energy monopoly to push countries around, right? And that he's going to use his big fucking nuclear arsenal as a you can't touch me.
And
right?
It's also a tactical mistake on Russia's part to want what's happening now because as we increase our tensions with China, China is going to be looking for new trading partners.
Yep.
And if you have a unified, stronger European Union, they suddenly become an even more lucrative market to look at.
Yeah.
And if push comes down to shove, China is going to look at the economic advantage of being close trade partners with the European Union and compare it to being close allies with Russia, and the decision is going to be pretty goddamn easy.
It's very easy. Here's the thing about
China is not stupid.
The Chinese-Russian relationship, people have a bad tendency of thinking that that's like this weird close relationship.
No.
It's not. They share a big fucking border, so they try to
they tolerate each other as best as they can,
and
China uses them to their advantage.
Yep. And the geopolitical goals of the two governments are often in alignment for one and only one reason, which is they do not want a unipolar world revolving around the United States and the West.
We have made that not an issue anymore.
Yes. But that was their goal. That is the beginning and end of where their deep ideological connection
and it is
lasted.
Vitally important to remember that Russia needs China exponentially more than China needs Russia.
Yeah.
Russia could disappear tomorrow and China would be pretty okay.
Yeah,
there'd be problems.
There'd be problems.
They'd have issues in their energy sector, but
our energy prices went up. Okay, fine. Whatever. But they'd find solutions. And
it's what they do.
Right. And whatever, that's why they're leading the world in solar, right?
Yeah. They're like, I guess we need to step this up.
Yep.
Oops.
But whatever replaced Russia would have energy.
Yeah.
Right? And if the Russian government collapses tomorrow, whatever replaces them is going to have energy, and China has a big checkbook.
Yeah.
Right?
And they're happy to just pay.
Yeah. So this is not beneficial to the U.S. at all. Zelensky getting pushed around in that meeting wasn't going to happen. We need to provide security guarantees.
Yeah.
Because the Ukrainians will not accept a ceasefire or a deal without them.
I view that meeting as the single greatest diplomatic blunder in my lifetime.
Hands down.
By not even just the U.S., by pretty much any country.
No, that
was one of the dumbest things an administration in any country has done.
This is
in my lifetime.
This is up there with LBJ insulting all of the Arab leaders, right?
Yeah.
Right after the 67 war.
Yeah.
Right. This is up there with that, which was kind of a blunder, but also not really. It was intentional,
and it was also one of those things where it's it took a long time for the full blowback to become apparent.
Right.
It took decades for it to be oh shit.
Exactly. But
this is this was measured over the course of hours, not years.
This is Neville Chamberlain style fucking capitulation. It's Vichyite fucking collaborator government springing up overnight bullshit. This is how bad it is. This is I have never seen anything like this.
No.
This is the fucking
I don't even have an analogy for it.
Austro-fascist takeover, fucking forcing Adolphus out. Like, I don't know. This is like,
I will say it is.
My grasp of history is trying to find an allegory to this, and it just like
It is.
it doesn't exist. And I know more than most of you.
In a weird way, it is nice to know. Not nice, but it's interesting to know how the world might have felt if everyone had been able to watch Archduke Franz Ferdinand be assassinated in 1914 live on television.
Right.
Like,
That's
because
yes.
because
There we go.
that's what this is going to be spoken of in history books later.
The televised
This moment.
We watched the televised assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in the Oval Office. That is the historical allegory. Oh,
That's how it's going to be talked about.
Holy
like
shit.
There's a part of me
God.
that is genuinely giddy about the idea of reading a history book in 20 years about now. Even though I'm living through it and it sucks,
Yeah.
I cannot wait to see how they talk about this time period in the future.
I mean,
Assuming we still have the written word.
right. There's
Like,
a lot
I will
this
read.
could take longer than 20 years.
The
to-
stone tablets that we carve this information into with chisels and rocks.
Right.
I will be interested in reading the cuneiform.
Like, we could be like, you know, the downside is like we could be like in a position where like we're socially and economically like Serbia in the interwar period.
Yeah.
Where the next 20 years are not good. Right? Like, you know, like we're impoverished and collapsed and fucking we still haven't rebuilt the buildings from the war. You know,
I don't know. I'm really wondering.
I don't. 20 years seems like 40.
At the same
40
point,
years
at the
from
same
now,
time,
if we're alive,
it does
I want to see what those history books
feel
look like.
like the rest of the world,
Mm-hmm.
the people who have historically been our allies in Europe and the rest of North America, seem to be. It feels like right now they are very squarely focusing all of the blame for this on Donald Trump personally.
Oh, hands down. But there's a lot of language that is like very fuck the U.S.
Right.
Like they're just like, we cannot rely on the U.S. anymore. The thing that Trump exposed isn't that he sucks. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is, but
He does.
he does.
But yeah. That's a given at this point.
It's that the United States Constitution legal system don't have a mechanism to stop this.
Right. We are the constitutional reforms that are going to be necessary if we come out the other side of this are going to be massive.
Yeah, and they're going to be hard to get through.
They're going to be hard to get through because no matter how bad things get, there's going to be about 30 or 40 million people in this country who fucking love every second of it.
Yeah, like and it.
And I don't know what's wrong with you people. I genuinely cannot fathom what's wrong with you people. You are fundamentally broken inside. Your brains don't work.
Like to be
You can't
honest,
think. You don't think. You have something is wrong with you, profoundly wrong with you, and I don't know what it is.
yeah, and I don't know what to do about it, but I don't want you guys fucking involved in policy or
Because
voting
I
or
also know
controlling society. You're
none of
dangerous
you-
and dumb.
None of you fucking people would accept any of this from anyone but Donald Trump.
Yeah, like. Or again, I fear that they're looking for the next daddy, like Elon or something, right? JD ain't it.
JD ain't it. I don't
But
think
there are
Elon's
some-
it either.
I think that we could see like an amalgamation of like JD and Musk, like if they could work together, picking up the slack. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe. I don't know. Like,
I am seeing Musk doing what he can to take over the movement, and it seems to be working.
kinda. But I mean, if there is an unpopular part of the movement right now, it is Elon Musk.
Here's the thing: is I'm actually seeing it. What I'm seeing is it more against Donald. Like he seems to be the failure now, and Daddy Musk is the one doing all the work. Maybe we're seeing different people,
It's probably
right?
It's probably.
But I'm seeing the Musk stands, like, and I'm seeing them, and they're like, well, yeah, Trump's our guy, but like, Musk's the one doing the work, man. He's awesome. He's based, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Doge.
But I also know when you had those all of those now canceled in the future town halls,
Yeah.
the Republicans were being yelled at about Elon Musk.
They were.
Primarily.
Yeah. So this is messy. It's tricky. Who knows where it's going to lead? But But that being said, like, yes, so we get this fucking nonsense fucking meeting. That didn't go well. We're watching the collapse of the Western Order that we talked about for fucking half an hour, 40 minutes last time. And now we're going to be sending back fucking 240,000 Ukrainians that we allowed here. And it's like, and I hate the whole, like, well, you better go fucking fight for your country, like, nonsense, like forcing people to do it. I am just reminded that Anne Frank and her family would be alive if they weren't denied a visa to the United States.
And it
twice.
is technically a war crime to deport war refugees back to their war-torn country.
It is.
While they're still in an active war.
Correct.
Like, it
is a war crime.
That's a war crime. Like, not that the United States doesn't commit war crimes all the time, but this is a specific example right now.
Yeah.
All right. So we have had a request from a frequent viewer / listener.
We can do this in the middle of the news, or we want to do it at the end?
We'll do it at the end.
Let's do it at the end. Yeah, okay.
We'll do it at the end.
Give him a special. We'll make it special.
Where are we at in the news here?
Right, so we got a couple more quick stories I just want to touch base on because shit's just wild in there. And let's not go off the rails like we usually do.
No more off the rails.
No more off the rails. All right, so
on the rails.
We are here.
Railed.
Doing rails. All right. Anyway, so the government watchdog that was suing for his wrongful termination has dropped his lawsuit based on long odds of winning. Said it was going to be a long legal fight, and so he's just given up, which
is what they want. I mean, that's the hope.
Yeah,
that people will give up.
I wish these people would fight to the fucking bitter end, but I get it. I do. It's hard to keep fighting.
We need a lot more lawyers willing to work pro bono on these cases.
Yep,
and willing to fight for the rule of law.
Yep,
like that's something that just it needs to happen.
Trump issues his last warning to Hamas to release the hostages and give back the bodies. It
was really fucking dumb.
It was really dumb. They already have a deal. They're like
it felt like it was written by a dementia-addled syphilis patient.
Yep, and it looks like they're just signaling that they want to basically break the deal and fucking start things back up and let Israel.
I think he did say something that was like, "I will give Israel whatever it needs to finish the job." I think that's a direct quote, or very close to a direct quote.
Like, just as there is a deal, they want Gaza, I think is the deal.
Yeah.
Zelensky arrives at an emergency European summit amid pressure from the U.S. and Russia. That just happened a few hours ago.
Okay. I imagine that went better for him than his last meeting with us.
Again, it looks like all of Europe is going to coalesce around this. And
if nothing else, Europe is going to be unified in a way it never has been ever before in the history of the continent.
Right. This is on par with them forming the EU.
This is and the EU has been fragile, and I don't think it is anymore.
No, I think
I think that this might have done more to strengthen the EU than possibly anything it has since its inception. Good for Europe.
A second federal judge has ruled to block the Trump administration's spending freeze. That's good. See, this is the dumbest fucking White House fucking Boston Globe moment. The White House says President Trump's historic address captivates America. Gag.
Okay. It did something to America.
So France to consider protecting European allies with its nuclear arsenal. Macron is looking to signal a nuclear umbrella deal with the rest of his European allies, much like NATO did for the non-nuclear states in NATO.
Yeah.
A fighter jet drops bombs by accident in South Korea, hurting 15 people.
Whose fighter jet did that?
I think it was a South Korean fighter jet. Well, let's find out.
At least it wasn't us this time.
Let's
look. Please, I hope it wasn't us this time.
Let's see. Series of fighter jets accidentally dropped 8 bombs on a civilian district.
Oh, fuck. God, It's almost like the time we almost accidentally nuked North Carolina.
Yep.
They still never found one of them bombs.
Ooh, new Tinder match while I'm looking. Sorry.
Ooh, that's exciting for you.
For me. All right. Incident involving a Air Force KF-16 aircraft in the city of Punshin near North Korea. They were up doing drills near North Korea and dropped bombs on civilian districts. Oopsie. It was the South Koreans, though. Wasn't us. Thankfully, it wasn't us. Let's see. A sanctuary city probe targeting Democratic mayors is happening in the House.
Yeah, I've been seeing some. I watched the mayor of Boston get grilled by several dipshits.
Yeah, that was bad and dumb. And they were asking dumb questions. They're like, "We don't track that data." It's like, aren't you in charge of the budget? Like, yeah.
I did love the optics of the mayor of Boston having an ashen cross on her head.
Yes,
for Ash Wednesday. While the Republicans who like to call themselves Christians were basically decrying the idea of empathy.
Yeah, that was amazing.
That was interesting optics.
They're very bad at Christianity because Jesus would not like them at all.
He'd like me. He'd probably like you.
Oh,
he'd get along with both of us just fine.
Like, hey, I don't have any. I'm sorry, I don't like your dad very much, but you're cool. Like, like that's how it would go.
He'd be like, "Yeah, I get it. I get it. I see. I know.
He's done some things.
I know.
Yeah, I know. Right?
He's been kind of absent for the last 2,000 years.
Yeah, like, and the last time he was around, he was a dick. So, I get it. The Trump administration plans to cut 15% of the VA workforce.
80,000 jobs.
Yep.
That'll help.
That's going to help the VA immensely.
That won't harm veterans at all.
The optics of cutting children's cancer research while propping up,
using a literal cancer-ridden child as a prop.
Yep,
that was cute.
And Black Kid too. It's like the most diversity fucking DEI moment. It's amazing how they'll do that. Like, do a DEI prop and then like go fucking gutting everything to help the kid.
I need you to bring me a dying black child.
Right.
I need him for reasons.
Pope Francis is still on life support.
I heard he is stabilized.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be dead already. It was like a week ago. I'm like, yeah, he's got maybe 72 hours tops. He's still plugging along. I also heard something about the Vatican coming out in support of gender-affirming care.
Yeah.
Which is cool. While Texas is trying to make it a felony.
Yeah.
There's a bill. I forget what it is. There's a House bill in the Texas House right now. It's got one sponsor that would make lying to your boss or the government felony fraud about your gender in Texas. They also want to criminalize all gender affirming care for all people of all ages.
Lying to your boss about it, like
lying to your boss.
You weren't required
felony fraud.
Like federal law currently, you're allowed to ask but not pressure, and if they say they don't want to answer, and it's only for EO purposes, for tracking like data,
right?
But you can't actually ask as part of the hiring process about the gender identity of a potential employee if your company has greater than 15 employees or something, right? Or if you operate in multiple states. Like if you fall under federal EO laws, you can't do that.
And I'm going to say this: as much as a lot of you people, well, maybe not the people watching this, but as much as a lot of dumb motherfuckers have convinced themselves they care about this, they don't.
No.
You don't care about this.
You don't. You really don't.
If you cared about this, you'd have cared about this before 3 years ago.
Yeah, like you guys don't.
You don't care.
You don't give a shit about women's sports. You don't. You didn't watch them.
I know. Here's the thing. I saw someone. I don't know who it was. They said this is the test. Anytime anybody talks about like trans women in women's sports, is name 10 female athletes.
Well,
I will begin to think you care if you can name 10 female athletes.
And here's the thing: is I have a hard time because again, like, the society doesn't like focus on women's sports all that much, right?
Yeah.
So like, I have a hard time naming like 10 right off the bat.
I could probably come up with 10 Olympians.
Yeah, like,
over the course of my lifetime.
right.
And we'd be starting with like Mary Lou Retton when I was like 5 years old. Nadia Comaneci,
Nancy Kerrigan.
Nancy Kerrigan, Tanya Harding.
Tanya Harding. There's two right there.
Two right there. Simone Biles.
Yep. Oh, Biles is great.
Chrissy Yamaguchi.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Let's see. Serena Williams.
Serena Williams.
Her sister.
Renee Mitchell. She played the softball at my high school.
Oh, nice. Okay. Let's see.
Everybody thought she was a lesbian, but she was not a lesbian, and she was kind of angry about that.
Allison and Melissa Lewis, two of my cousins. They both had scholarships for different sports. One for basketball, one played softball and gymnastics.
My friend Debbie ran track in high school.
Nice.
Female athlete.
See, there we go. Yeah, no, I mean, they don't care. This is a non-issue.
Indiana just officially banned all trans girls from high school sports. Do you know how many trans athletes there are in the entirety of the state of Indiana? Zero. There are none.
There are none.
None.
Yeah, I figured.
None. It was vitally important. They banned the nun people.
There were like a grand total of like less than 100 nationwide.
It's like 40.
Yeah, like
40.
Yeah, and at the whole high school level, and like another 40 or so at the like college level.
Yeah, out of all like 550,000 athletes in collegiate sports, I think there's like less than 50 are trans.
Get over it, guys.
Which is like 0.0001%.
Also, the Olympic rules allow trans athletes, so this is one of those, like, even if you disagree with it, like, these colleges feed to the Olympics, and the Olympic rules allow for them.
One of the examples when Trump was rambling in his fucking speech about like trans women ruining sports, he talked about this trans women. She beat the world record in this race by 5 hours. It is an 800-mile bicycle race. She finished in 8 days and 23 hours, which did beat the old record by 5 hours. You know the best part about this race? It's co-ed. It's a co-ed race. Men and women racing against each other, where they have to they ride a certain amount of way on their bicycle, and then they pick it up and they have to run with their bicycle, and then they get back on their bicycle and they ride some more for 800 fucking miles across the goddamn desert.
And it's co-ed, so gender doesn't fucking matter.
Gender doesn't matter. And that's the thing. There are so many metrics by which we could segregate sports that aren't gender-based that would be at least as valid.
Right. Like, again,
you could do weight class, you could do strength class, you can figure out someone's like speed range and have all those athletes
general
compete.
Skill levels, like you could really do it, because again, Serena Williams, like as a woman, can outplay a lot of professional men in tennis.
And
a lot of them.
Do you know why?
Not all of them.
Do you know why we have gender segregated sports to begin with? Women were dominating track and field when it wasn't segregated by gender.
Yeah, I forgot about. Yes, you're right. I remember reading that. Yes.
So they're like, well,
right. It's
gotta keep the ladies in their place.
And then we have dumb gendered sports that shouldn't be, like bowling and ones where like size and skill.
Remember when the International Chess League tried to fucking ban trans women? It's like, chess.
It's chess. Like, gendering chess is stupid.
You see, women's brains are 23% lighter than a man's. It's science.
Right. It's fucking stupid.
What are you doing?
All right. Let's see. North Korea has halted tourism just weeks after reopening for tourism.
I hadn't realized they reopened.
They apparently reopened for tourism.
Did they not have enough chaperones to make sure you didn't see anything you weren't supposed to see?
Basically, it looked like too much like Western influence immediately came in, and they were like, "Oh, nope." These tourists, even on these tours, are learning too much and telling too many people too many things. And it was actually 90% of them were Chinese tourists, and even they, the Chinese, were giving up too much information and seeing too much shit. That's fucking great. North Korea, you sad little country, you I know that, tankies like to fucking stand it and blame like American imperialism on all of it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we were greatly responsible for a lot of the shit that happened to start that war.
Right.
Sure.
But you have a weird pseudo-monarchy.
Yeah.
You're not a communist utopia.
No, weird pseudo-monarchy that like obsesses over a dead guy from 3 generations ago. It's,
he didn't poop.
right?
And every time he golfed, he scored a perfect 18.
Right.
18 hole-in-ones every single time. The first time he ever touched a golf club, hole-in-one.
He created the concept of the movie. Like,
Yeah, I will never forget the time I watched a tanky argue with our mutual friend Reno that he would rather go to a North Korean work prison than a U.S. prison if he committed a crime. Rather go to a North Korean labor camp. I'd get treated better, sir.
Jesus Christ,
sir. Like, we got a lot of problems in this country, and we have a unusually large number of problems around incarceration.
Mm-hmm.
It's not North Korean labor camp problems.
Yeah.
Like, have some goddamn perspective.
This is a weird one. There's some like mass, so the probationary employee thing across federal government has been a disaster already, right?
Yes.
But so
we both know multiple people who've been impacted by this nonsense.
yeah. But this one's crazy. The CIA is firing like most of its probationary employees right now and getting rid of people who've been there less than 2 years. And it's weird because it doesn't seem to be like intelligently targeted again.
Well, it hasn't been at all.
Right. But it's basically their assumption is that everybody that's been hired in the last couple of years is a diversity hire and has to go or whatever. But like, I don't understand gutting our intelligence industry, like our like intelligence apparatus again, unless you're really trying to fucking hurt our government.
I mean, if you don't want anyone to counter anything Russia might do.
Thousands of fired USDA employees have to be temporarily reinstated following a legal decision. That's good.
Yeah, that's good.
Because, food safety.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of safety, the EPA has been told it is not allowed to stringently limit the amount of sewage discharge into our water supply by our fine Supreme Court in a 5-4 decision.
Wow.
All of the women were like, no, we don't want poop in the water.
Jesus Christ.
And again, it's another one of those times where Amy Coney Barrett was a pleasant surprise. I have a feeling that's going to be a trend that continues over the course of her tenure on the court. I have a feeling she's going to end up being less... I think of the people who you could call like religious loonies on the court.
Right.
She's going to end up being the one who is the most religious and the least loony.
Yeah, I have a feeling that what will happen is that her trad cat quiverful like beliefs, right, will line up with her being bad about a few women's issues.
Yeah.
Right?
There are specific things she'll necessarily be terrible on.
Right. And like a few the right calls quote unquote religious liberty issues.
Right.
Right? Where like,
when it comes
prayer
to
in school bullshit.
When it comes to things where she doesn't have a specific religious conviction on, I think she is going to default to the rule of law.
Yeah. And that's what it seems like is going to happen.
And that's better than I expected from her. And
yes.
I will admit that pleasantly surprises me, especially with like the circumstances of her confirmation and it being expedited over the course of basically a long weekend.
Yeah. Because that scared me. That was like, especially considering her religious beliefs and the other things she'd written about.
So young.
Mm-hmm. So here's a fun one. With that summit, the UK believes that about 20 countries could join a Ukraine coalition. Like,
there's as bad as this is for us, there is a non-zero chance that in the long term, this is going to be better for Ukraine.
Yeah.
Like, I think it is morally indefensible what we're doing.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that it could end up in a roundabout way benefiting Ukraine more than our aid did. As a small, tiny consolation. We still look like shit because we're being shitty, but I think it could be beneficial to them over the long term. And I think it's definitely good for Europe.
Yeah.
Than European solidarity.
Yeah, this is we might be watching a big realignment away from us, and that's bad for us.
And
But maybe good for the rest of the world. Who knows?
I mean, that's the thing. Historically, Europe having more power hasn't been good for anyone outside of Europe.
Right? Yeah.
I don't know how much they are genuinely over their colonial ambitions. We'll find out.
We will find out.
We'll find out.
I mean, here's the thing: is most of them gave up most of it a long time ago. The last ones really holding on were the UK and France to a lesser degree.
Yeah,
right?
I mean the UK. They're a special case.
They had that big ass empire, and
like it is shocking to realize that. Like you look at, because that's the thing when you talk about the United Kingdom and the British Empire, you really are talking about the fucking English. Because they colonized their own fucking islands. There's the fact that they had an empire that big for being a small population,
right,
is pretty goddamn impressive.
Oh yeah,
horrific, but impressive.
They did it mostly through economics and creating proxy militaries wherever they went, right? Yeah. Like by building a local force, or by interestingly like taking guys like Idi Amin, right?
Yeah.
And putting him in units.
Fantastic human being, Idi Amin.
Oh, yeah. But putting him in units that went around the rest of the empire.
Right.
Like enforcing, like...
A lot of proxies.
Yeah. Like, but so, like, they would have, like, a unit of, like, you know, these fucking basically mercenary troops, like, go fucking kill a bunch of Indians and then send them back to fucking Africa. It's fucking crazy.
Since we're on the topic empire, I just want to say this, because I saw this recently, and it's...
we're bad at this whole topic.
It's some interesting speculation about empire, because it goes back to Alexander the Great.
Uh-oh.
And there is some evidence. There's this disease that's been going around India lately. That's paralyzing people.
Okay.
Like, and it basically makes you look like you are dead when you are not dead.
Okay.
And there is a lot of speculation based on the lack of decay of his body 10 days after he died, and some other factors that. When he was buried, he might not have been dead. He might have just been paralyzed and looked dead. Because back then, they didn't check for a pulse. They just checked to see if you were breathing. And if your breathing is shallow enough, it's not going to look like you're breathing.
So
Alexander the Great might have been buried alive. Yeah.
Oh, I fucking love hearing that. That's funny.
Alexander the Great might have been buried alive.
History. I wish we could get an answer to that. I want it. I want to know.
It's a little late now.
Yeah.
There's not much left in terms of remains.
Imagine being the most imperial,
like the first,
the granddaddy of all great imperialism.
Yeah.
And the greatest conqueror humanity has ever seen.
Because he went from like basically perfectly healthy to dead in 48 hours.
Like, but imagine doing that. Like going there, like you are top of the fucking world. You are the God King of the greatest empire that has ever existed by this point. No other empire.
At 32 years old.
At 32 years old. And then getting buried fucking alive because they think you're dead.
Because what they say is, based on what the written records say of his symptoms in the 48 hours before he died, and comparing them to the symptoms of this disease that is now spreading in India, which has been a disease off and on. There's been epidemics of it over the centuries. They line up pretty goddamn well. Again, we'll never prove it. We'll never know for sure. But man, being buried alive is one of the worst deaths I can imagine.
I love everything about this part of the story. I mean, that's great.
I thought you'd like that.
I did a great deal. All right. Speaking of Amy Coney Barrett, the MAGA world is losing their fucking minds over that ruling requiring them to reinstate funding. Like, absolutely losing their minds. Kash Patel's out here. This isn't a job for the weak. She's not who we thought she was. An absolute lightweight who doesn't have the strength needed for the Supreme Court and to make sure the U.S. Constitution is followed. Very disappointing ruling tonight. What's your thoughts on Amy Coney Barrett? And then, like, they went fucking crazy with calling her Amy Coney Barrett. Fucking Cat Turd was fucking going off. Jack Palso fucking called her the DEI judge. Like, this is fucking nuts. Like, this was their big pick, and just because
she was their pride and fucking joy when they fucking nominated her. They thought she was a goddamn ringer till the day she died.
Yep, and they don't have Kavanaugh in the same way that they thought they would.
No,
and again, Gorsuch, while awful, is sometimes
There are certain issues that he's just inherently pretty good on.
right. And so Kavanaugh is kind of like spineless and will go with whatever direction Roberts is kind of going.
I'm pretty sure you could get him to rule any given way with promises of a six-pack.
Probably. But
I love beer.
he isn't the worst jurist. He doesn't really have that strong of a judicial philosophy.
No, he's. I mean, outside of Alito and Thomas,
Yeah.
who we always know are going to be wrong no matter what.
Right.
Like, for spite. Like, Thomas, I genuinely believe that Clarence Thomas will have, like, a deeply held conviction and rule against it just to spite someone he doesn't like.
Yeah.
Just for shits and giggles.
But aside from those two, the other three each have an area where they're strong and where they're weak. And, like, into varying degrees. And it's like Roberts and Barrett, like, have the strongest, like, legal center to them. And
I
the other four,
do
really, sorry, other four.
wonder.
Jesus Christ, it's fucking.
I do wonder at which point Roberts is going to become like genuinely concerned about how his tenure at as Chief Justice is going to be viewed historically.
I think that ship sailed, actually.
Yeah.
I think that was what he was really concerned about up until a few years ago. And then when his rulings kept getting shit on and like the court started coming under serious scrutiny for its ridiculous rulings, like in the emoluments case.
I mean,
right?
or
And-
maybe have a goddamn ethics standards.
Right. And when the big ethics fight started too.
It's like how
Like-
I don't even know how you can argue against the idea that like there should be ethics standards for Supreme Court justices.
Right. I mean, their main argument is basically that, well, you don't have the authority.
It's not even about authority. It's
Right.
about principle.
I know. On principle, it should exist. But
Like-
his argument is basically like, well, you don't have the authority. We'll do these voluntary things on our own. Right?
All right,
And it's
do
like,
'em
then. One, do them.
Do 'em.
And two, Roberts is wrong on that. Like, and he knows he's wrong on it.
Mm-hmm.
The Constitution gives Congress the power to write rules for the government, and that includes
The court.
the court.
I mean, aside from saying that there will be a Supreme Court.
And that they have original jurisdiction over a very small number of things.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
I mean, even
The Constitution gives Congress the ability to basically cut the courts off from funding, change where their jurisdiction lies.
judicial review
Is
isn't
something-
explicitly in there.
Nope, that was Marbury versus Madison.
What year was that? 1805? Something like that?
God.
A long ass time ago.
Yeah.
But it was, that was one of the-
1803.
1803.
Yeah. So, but yeah, like they had to give themselves the power to review the laws of
And
Congress.
I think judicial review makes sense.
I do too.
I don't.
It's just that in the few years before that, the way it had been envisioned was that individual laws and actions, right, could be ruled against on their constitutionality very specifically,
Yeah.
right? But it couldn't invalidate an entire law.
Right. And you could give guidance on saying, this law is unconstitutional because of this.
Right.
Solve this, change this, and it becomes constitutional.
Yes, but it was it was narrower, right?
Yeah.
And it basically didn't give them the broad power to just
Strike something down.
Or basically strike down a whole like idea of a thing. So like, if they made a law that they were like, well, this enforcement of it would be unconstitutional, but the rest of the law stands. And also, if you made a new law that did the exact same thing, that law would also stand. Right?
Right.
Like we can't invalidate whole ideas, and we can't expand liberties. Now that's bad and dumb.
Right.
So it makes sense, but they had to take that power.
Because I'm not this. I've never believed that like individual liberties should be the sort of thing that like are purely like political decisions.
Yeah. Same.
I mean, if we had to rely on people just voting for who gets rights, so few people would have rights.
Right.
At this point, this country would still be ruled by white fucking male landowners.
So. Yep, and of course, the budget office has said that the Republicans cannot meet their own budget targets without cutting Medicare or Medicaid, that they're going to have to slash them in order to meet the budget targets that they're putting into these laws.
Yeah.
And they know it, and they're going to do it anyways. So that was the bad news. It's the news.
The news. So let's do some good news, because like as I almost said earlier,
Yep.
We have one of our regular listeners He listens on the podcast apps. He doesn't watch the YouTube.
Bastard. No, that's fine.
I don't even know if he's subscribed here on the YouTube. I don't even know if he has a YouTube account, to be honest. But he has asked that we not be all doom and gloom all the time. And you know what? I understand his point. He said, could you give us some good news? So we're going to, every week from going forward, we're going to find at least one piece of good news to talk about. And I have one, and I think you have one too.
I think I might, yeah. But for you, Sam.
For you, Sam, this is Sam's good time, happy news hour. It's going to be about 5 minutes.
Or less.
Or less.
Let's be real.
I have, the piece of good news that I have is the Democrats actually managed to unanimously unify to filibuster a bad piece of legislation and fucking kill it. And that was a national ban on trans people in sports.
Yep.
They were able to defeat that because, again, you're talking about a law that would have been taking the full force of the federal government and focusing it on about 4 dozen people in the United States of America. Right. That's stupid. That's silly. And I'm glad they defeated it. I'm glad that they unified to defeat it.
Yeah, same.
Because that's the thing. Even if 5 years ago this had happened and they'd have been able to filibuster it, I know Manchin and Sinema would have not been part of the club. Right. It wouldn't have been unanimous. And as little credit as I'm willing to give the Democratic Party at this point, good on this one. Good for you. You did a good.
This is true.
Do more of the goods.
So, some local good news. Actually, interesting one.
Ooh, I like local good news.
You know what company is moving its headquarters from New York City to St. Petersburg, Florida?
Nope.
Foot Locker.
Really?
Yeah. That's some interesting economic development for our town. And Sam works in like the economic development world, right?
Yeah.
Like, so you know,
it's like I found out that Goodyear's international headquarters were in St. Pete when it moved.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that building down the street from the bar
that really weird
looks to be abandoned building had apparently for 75 years been Goodyear's international headquarters.
It looks like an abandoned warehouse.
It looked like an abandoned warehouse, and you could go in there and just buy tubing. And it's like I need a piece of tubing.
And they did bulk order shit. Yeah. Like you could go in there and be like, I need 6,000 feet of tubing. It
genuinely looked like an abandoned warehouse because most of the outer walls were covered in graffiti and the windows seemed to be boarded up. And they only moved to Clearwater. They didn't move far. They moved to the Scientology capital of the fucking globe.
But there's a little piece of local good news.
That's good. I hope that is.
Some other Florida good news is a majority of Florida residents don't support changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America.
Good. I mean, first of all,
we all live here on the Gulf of Mexico.
Let's be honest.
We're used to it. It's on our maps.
Like, you might be able to get support if you were just going to rename it to the Gulf. Right? Because that's what we all call it. Yep. And when we talk about it, we just call it the Gulf. Yeah. Because I mean, what other gulfs can you important gulfs can you think of? Gulf of Tonkin hasn't been important for 50 fucking years.
Right.
The Persian Gulf, not the same. Neither of those are the Gulf.
Right.
The Gulf of Mexico is the Gulf. It's the Grand Canyon of Gulfs.
Oh, this is one that hit while we were recording. Some good news. A judge reinstates the NLRB member Trump fired. The one, black woman that was fired. Everybody else was kept, and they get rid of the black lady, which is
good.
Yeah. It was reinstated, and the judge said a president is not a king. Was part of their ruling. So there's some good news for you, ladies and gentlemen.
Some French minister over in France called Trump a king. In a fiery little speech against our shitty overlord too, and I don't often give the French credit, But good for the French.
And I don't want to end this on a sad note, so sorry, Sam, but moving on. Fuck you, Gavin Newsom.
Well, yeah, did you see that he had, Gavin Newsom had fucking Charlie Kirk on his fucking podcast, because Gavin Newsom has a podcast, and we need to have more subscribers than Gavin Newsom, because fuck that guy.
Yeah, who
has Charlie Kirk on and just agrees with him a bunch of shit. Like, oh, yeah, fuck the homeless and fuck the transes.
Newsom, you were in such a position, like, to really, really, like, capitalize on this moment, and you decided to do this shit. Fuck you, man. Like,
Fuck
don't
you.
do this. Do what we're doing and be a fucking antagonist. It's good for the soul.
It feels nice.
It feels good.
It feels fucking good, man.
Fuck.
God damn it.
All right. But that has been the news.
All 2 hours of it.
2 hours of it. So much.
Jesus goddamn Christ.
We can't
This is
stay
going to
on
be a
target.
this is going to be a long fucking episode. Yeah. I don't apologize.
I don't either. We
fucking.
Well, we can't stay on target. Like, look, you could be hanging out at the bar with us while we do this for hours. We do it. Or you can get this. This is just like coming and spending money at my business, but instead.
Even though you should give us all your money, you technically don't have to.
Yeah, but you should.
You should.
Give us all your fucking money.
You have a moral obligation, I think.
But
you don't have, like, a legal one.
Yeah, remember, we need...
This is the difference between...
the funds necessary to get a Cybertruck
so we can...
and see a lithium fire.
I need this.
I want to know so bad.
I need to know, like, at how close can you get an oversized marshmallow before it bursts into flames on its own? Like, how close can... Like, I want to know how close I can physically stand to a 5,000 degree lithium fire before my body says, no, back away.
Yeah.
These are questions I desperately need the answer to. And I really want to do it in a Walmart parking lot.
We will do it wherever we can get the permits and some safety personnel to help. So because of this...
I mean, the trop's just sitting there right now. Can't do any more damage to the trop than it's already been done.
But we're going to do this as legally as possible.
For the lulls.
For the lulls. So give us all your money.
I mean, here's another thing. All right.
And we need to record in a hot tub someday. Just the two of us,
if you own a Cybertruck and you regret that purchase, and you're thinking to yourself, "There's no way I'm going to be able to recoup my losses by selling this thing because no one wants it because it's toxic." You can just donate it to us,
and we will find a way to dispose of that thing on camera.
It'll be fucking glorious.
It's so good, so
glorious.
Fucking good. All right. So yeah.
All right. So, do we want to move on to the actual topic of this
this
week's episode?
We're gonna make the rest short.
Yeah, because this is going to be mostly just ranting on a very specific topic.
Yeah.
Let me get the special image for the special topic up.
I was thinking about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
This.
So, we were talking the other day about how connection, one thing leads to another and dominoes fall, and we end up in these moments where the dumbest thing leads to the current situation. There used to be this show that I watched on PBS when I was a kid. I think it was called Connections. It was made by the BBC, British show.
Okay.
And it was just this Englishman who would take like one really obscure historical incident and then step by step connect it to some seemingly entirely unrelated historical incident hundreds of years later.
I need to
and he would
find
just
this
go
show.
step by step by step. It was fucking great. It was fucking amazing. And it stuck with me for years. I was in high school when I was watching this
I
thing.
need to find these. Yeah.
It was on
awesome.
PBS when I watched it. So it was a BBC production. I think it was called Connections. I don't remember the name of the host. But it was a bespectacled Englishman with some male pattern baldness and some graying, and he was very.
He had that accent.
He had that accent. He had that academic, professorial English accent.
I'm getting turned on just thinking about it. Like,
great show, but he would just show you how like fucking banana plantation in 1804 led to fucking the bombing of Hiroshima. Like shit like that. He would just make these connections over the course of history. Fucking brilliant show. And we get to thinking about how the dumbest things have led to the moment that we live in now.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's not akin to if 9/11 had never happened, Twilight would have never been written.
Yeah.
Because if 9/11 hadn't happened, fucking Gerard Way would not have decided to stop pursuing his career that he was on to form My Chemical Romance.
Right.
And if My Chemical Romance had never been a band and not written some great albums, Stephanie Meyer would not have listened to them and decided to write terrible fiction.
Yeah.
And if Stephanie Meyer hadn't written terrible fiction, you know what we don't get? We don't get 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah.
So 9/11 is directly responsible for 50 Shades of Grey.
And Twilight.
And Twilight.
And My Chem.
And My Chem. Like, one of those things is good.
Yeah. But 9/11.
9/11.
Like, again, we get these dominoes, right?
Yeah.
So Russia invades Afghanistan, overthrowing their communist allied government because it was too friendly to the West.
Right.
And not capable of controlling like dissident movements within their population,
Right.
Controlling to the Soviet standard.
Right. And this was,
things were mostly fine.
And yeah, like it's
it was
real easy to forget.
Troublesome, but
I would love you, if you haven't, I would love for everyone listening to go and look up some photographs of Kabul in like the early 1970s.
oh yeah, it's great.
They called it the Paris of the Near East.
Yeah.
Like it was
vastly different from what we think of it as
yeah,
today.
it was
Yeah, but I'm trying not to digress too far.
Yeah.
We get that.
Yeah.
We fund then the Mujahideen. That turns into it breaks up into two fucking things, which is one, the Taliban controlling Afghanistan,
Right.
and then outlier groups, outsider, like non-Afghani groups form shit like Al-Qaeda, right? And then Bin Laden starts doing things over and over and
Right.
over again.
And
it spirals, and then it leads to 9/11.
Right.
And that leads to the longest war in U.S. history, which leads to an excuse to invade Iraq and destabilizes Syria, right?
Right.
Leading to an immigration crisis as refugees are flowing from Middle East, North Africa into Europe, leading to a rise of the far right in Europe.
Yeah, the
right?
increase in ethno-nationalism, an increase in anti-immigrant sentiment. You end up with ISIS becoming ascendant in the region
Yeah.
and causing all sorts of problems.
All because an invasion in the fucking 70s, right?
Right.
That's how this happens. These things chain from one thing to another, and the world is always a series of causal events. And that's Americans and people in general have a bad tendency of seeing only the next step or the first step
Right.
and what they want out of a thing, and not playing the tape through.
Even our intelligence agencies, who should be forward-thinking about this, they don't seem to consider the blowback of their actions at all.
They're very bad
The
about it.
CIA is fucking terrible about that. They may be worse about that than literally anything they do.
Yep. So let's talk about some other fun ones.
All right, let's do it.
Now, one of my personal favorites is the fact that the invasion of Ukraine
Yeah.
would never have been made possible if not for the fact that some folks designing a nuclear power plant forgot to waterproof an electrical closet in Japan.
Yeah.
Fukushima happens, and tsunami hits, and electrical closet that wasn't waterproofed causes the nuclear disaster that
Right.
happened there. And the Europeans get scared out of their goddamn minds and start shutting down nuclear reactors, particularly Germany, which had no tsunami risk, no major tectonic risk.
And
Like,
these were
different generation
reactors. They had much greater safety protocols. They were much safer. They produced exponentially less waste.
And this is one of those where I get angry at the
Goddamn hippies.
the goddamn hippies, the green left.
Yeah.
They were wrong. They're always wrong about nuclear. And it causes dumb things like this.
Yeah,
But
my dad worked at a nuclear plant my entire childhood, so I've always been like very aware of like the actual risks and benefits of nuclear power compared to like normal people.
exactly.
I could see like in the distance across the horizon the steam rising from the stacks.
like Springfield.
Yeah, it was exactly like that. I mean, it was Peach Bottom nuclear power plant.
Nice. And so, but that
Just across the state line in PA.
That leads Germany and a lot of Europe more reliant on Russian energy and less willing to step up in 2014 and less willing to step up in 2022 when the invasion, the full-scale invasion happened, right?
Right.
Like far less willing to step up at those 2 periods of time to help until the politics became inevitable that they had to. But without like that, if the United States and Germany had been less reliant on all of that energy flowing into Europe, right, and the economics of it would have been less politically toxic, Europeans, by and large, would have immediately demanded more sanctions, more pushback against Russia. They would have crippled the Russian economy immediately when they invaded Crimea.
And
but
honestly,
they didn't because of the economics of energy.
Because they had started relying more on Russian energy exports. That is the only reason Russia was financially able to stage the fucking invasion in the first place. They would not have had the material resources to do it.
Yeah, they've been teetering on the brink of financial collapse for decades because they can't get their economy to be larger than the GDP of fucking Italy, and they're Russia.
Yeah.
Like, they're a gas station run by a mob, right?
Yeah.
That's all they got.
It is 12 oligarchs in a trench coat pretending to be a country.
Yeah. So if you don't waterproof that electrical closet, this is chain by chain by chain leading to that. It's amazing.
Yeah, I got one.
Okay.
I got one that I like. We are teetering on the brink of living in a Christian nationalist, theocratic, fascist hell state under Donald Trump because the new atheist movement was sexist in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all remember Elevator Gate. Elevator Gate was fucking stupid. So there was an atheist conference in the UK, and one of the speakers there was Rebecca Watson, who was had a blog called Skepchick at the time, and she's still on YouTube. She does great content. I like her a lot.
Okay.
And it was late at night. She had given her talk at the conference, and it was like 4 a.m., and she was in the elevator at the end of the night going back to her room, and a drunk guy stumbled in, and he got a little too familiar and a little too forward. And so the next day she was giving another talk, and all she said was, it's like, hey guys, if you are a man and you want to approach a woman, don't do it when you're blackout drunk in an elevator at 4 a.m. and she just wants to go home and sleep. And the new atheist movement at the time completely fractured in two separate camps, and it became known as Elevator Gate. And you had guys like Dawkins and Thunderfoot. Do you remember Thunderfoot?
Oh, fuck him.
You had Dawkins and Thunderfoot, and that contingent who like saw this as like this affront to modern Western civilization because how dare you as a white woman in the Western world act as if you are being oppressed when Muslim women exist. And that was when Dawkins wrote his ridiculous Dear Muslima letter.
Oh, goddamn.
That's why he wrote that. So it became this whole fracture, and you had Rebecca Watson and guys like P.Z. Myers, who I still respect a lot to this day, who wrote, I forget the name of his blog. It's still out there. Feringula. And they were on the hey, don't be creepy.
Right.
Don't be creepy. And she didn't mention the guy's name. She didn't say who it was. She didn't do a call out. She was just giving general advice like, hey, if you are a man and you want to approach a woman and you want to be successful at it, don't be a drunken dipshit when you do it.
And
this was just good advice that would help people get laid if they were smart enough to fucking pay attention to it.
Also, maybe alone in an elevator is a bad place for it. Like, so alone in an elevator is like a weirdly like look, if you catch a smile and you guys give each other the eye in the elevator, say hi. That's it. Just say hi and then move on. And then when you leave the elevator, maybe
that fracture.
But inside the elevator, don't do it.
That fracture in the new atheist movement. Which, the new atheist movement in general had some problems because it was weirdly Islamophobic from the beginning.
It got worse as the war on terror continued.
But that became the early days of the anti-SJW movement.
Yeah.
And you had guys... Oh, it's the cat food. You had guys like The Amazing Atheist, who was like, he started his career doing that sort of anti-SJW movement. Now, he's reformed a lot. He has come around.
I didn't like him early on, but
he has really done a lot to reform himself and his beliefs, because he realized when Trump got elected that he had been part of creating the circumstances that allowed Trump to get elected in the first place by fostering the anti-SJW movement, which directly led to Gamergate when that happened, which radicalized a ton of dumb, young, impressionable gamer men, boys really, into being more misogynist, more sexist, and more racist than they otherwise had been.
Yeah, and here's the thing.
And it just spiraled out of control. And like, if Gamergate hadn't happened, Trump wouldn't have gotten elected. He certainly would have gotten reelected now.
And here's the thing is, I am slightly more sympathetic than a lot of other folks on the like socially progressive left of the anti-SJW argument, right? Like, I think that many people go too far.
Right.
I think that a lot of this discourse shuts down legitimate criticism, legitimate arguments, makes the conversation toxic from the beginning.
Right.
I think that, like, people who are like woke scolds, as I call them, or people who are like truly the really shitty feminists who are like, all men suck and like you're not allowed to fucking have an
second wave
opinion.
feminists who all became TERFs.
Yeah, like all sorts of these spaces. And in the left, like that video we watched the other day, and we talked about, I think last week on the show a little bit, that whole like
palingenetic narrative.
Yeah, the palingenetic narrative. And the other thing is that the left spends all its time arguing over the right terms and whether somebody's on the like is fucking meeting all of the bars of their perfect fucking like, you know, language usage, right? Which alienates normies, right?
Yeah,
it alienates normal people. Like, that's bad.
The important...
Like, so I want to, like, someday we'll talk more about that,
Yeah.
but, like, I'm a little bit more sympathetic, but at the same time, just have some fucking empathy. Like, it's okay to not be perfectly politically correct. And
Yeah.
it is okay to also ask people to be a little bit more sensitive.
Right.
It's not okay to be at each other's throats when you generally are on the same side. Right.
Right. Like the context matters, intent matters.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to police the language of people like who've been using certain language their entire life, and they're in their like 40s or 50s. Mm-hmm. Like, you can ask them, it's like, hey, don't say it that way, that's fucked up. And I'm like, oh yeah, shit, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But like, you can't be belligerent about it because it's just not going to help. It's going to end up alienating them and making the problem worse over the long term.
Exactly. I want to save some of that because I want to do a top segment on that later.
All right.
Like, I want, like, so let's, because I want to dive into that. AJ and I had a great conversation about it the other day. I'll bring it up.
Okay.
So that was your that spread
Just
from
a spiral.
Gamergate, all the way from the new atheist movement, wild, over a fucking elevator,
Right.
And
So,
a guy being a creep.
so we end up with theocracy because the atheists couldn't get their goddamn shit together, which feels fucking appropriate.
It does, doesn't
And you know
it?
what? I say this. I in the early days, aside from the fact that I always thought their focus on the Muslim world when Christianity was the problem we were all facing in the West was weird.
Yes,
and
100%.
it felt like the fact that they would always say things like, it can't be racist because it's a religion.
Yeah, that's no.
You're still being racist, guys.
Yeah.
Like, you fucking don't do that. But like,
Especially when you're not talking about like moderate, like, you know, like you're not talking about like moderate Iranian American Muslims who like
no, and
like,
you are lumping you are talking about Muslims as if they are all ISIS or Al Qaeda.
Yeah.
With no nuance. I remember that argument that Sam Harris and fucking Ben Affleck of all people had on Bill Maher's shit fuck of a show. And Affleck probably got too like animated in making his points,
but he was
and
right.
that hurt him like optically. But he was absolutely correct.
Yeah, he was absolutely correct.
Sam Harris was absolutely wrong.
And Harris has done a little bit better since.
Oh, he did a lot. He did a lot of shrooms.
Yeah, but it took years. Like Harris was garbage up until just a few years ago.
Yeah.
he started off strong, and I liked his work. Then he got weirdly racist.
Yeah.
And now he's gotten a bit better.
Yeah, and you know, I started off liking Dawkins a lot. He has not gotten better. He has only gotten worse because he's a TERF now too.
Like his first couple books, like the Blind Watchmaker one and Selfish Gene. I loved the Selfish Gene.
He started to get a little too polemic in the God Delusion, but I still have it somewhere on my bookshelf.
Yeah, but fuck you, Dawkins, for your racist, sexist, fucking homophobic, turfy bullshit.
You're fucking Englishman.
This is a fun one we talked about the other day.
Huh.
Low tax hating hentai.
Man, when that meme first popped up, I was like, I fucking hate that I understand every goddamn word of this.
Yeah, right?
I wish I had it saved so I could put it up on the screen, but I don't.
So
why don't you explain it? It's your...
So the reason that we have Donald Trump and a fascist takeover of our government right now, one of the core pieces that wouldn't, like, all this collapses without any one of these things that happened that we're talking about.
Everything is a necessary condition.
And this condition that created the media ecosystem that drove the existence of the alt-right and the keks and the doing it for the lols young right that like propelled this weird like new fascism came from the moderator of Something Awful banning, because he really did not like anime. He fucking had a hard on against anime, but he started banning anime and particularly hentai from the Something Awful forums, and they moved, and all of those fucking weebs moved over to two spaces, which were the bodybuilder forums, which they weren't well liked, but nobody cared. Right. And this place called 2chan, which was a Japanese...
yes.
Yeah, Japanese, but like all sorts of Asians used it.
Right.
But it was a Japanese like forum site.
It was an image posting board.
Yep, image posting board. And they moved over there because there's lots of fucking anime and hentai over there.
Yeah.
They loved it. But they kept getting bullied off because they were Americans.
Fair.
Right? So all these Japanese guys were like, fuck you Americans, you speak English, we don't care about you, get the fuck off our sites.
You
like,
otaku pieces of shit.
Otaku pieces. They're just making fucking mad fun of them. They keep getting bullied off and they're getting sick of it. So one guy decides, well, fuck 2chan, I'm going to make 4chan.
And you know, I remember the early days of 4chan when it was just, I mean, there was shit posting, but it was mostly just fun, anonymous.
Yeah, but I knew it was wrong from the get-go.
There was always
that shit
like
was toxic.
There was always
fuck.
more racism and sexism than there should have been.
Yep, from the get-go.
From the get-go, from day one. But man, I have not seen something spiral.
Oh, it was
like Poll did. Because that's the thing about 4chan is like some of the boards to this day are still like relatively sane.
Yeah.
I mean, B has always been a fucking shit show. The B-tards, they were something special.
Right.
But it's Poll, where like you basically had a bunch of 15 and 16-year-old edgelords memeing modern day Nazism into political ascendancy in the United States of America just because they thought it was funny.
And these assholes would go over to sites like Stormfront, get memes, and then bring them over to Poll.
Yeah.
Like, so spaces where I was like watching the Nazi movement in America and it's like tiny little fucking space, like worried about it and keeping an eye on what was going on over there. They were taking that shit and memeing the fuck out of it to millions more people every year.
Most of it was not sincere.
No.
Like, they just thought it was edgy and funny. But here's the thing. When you make those sort of edgy, funny jokes long enough, after a while, they stop being jokes.
Right.
Like, you internalize it. It's like if you've got a friend group, and there's like one guy in the friend group who's just always the butt of the joke.
Right.
You're always giving him shit. He's always the fucking guy you're making fun of. He's the stupid one. After a while, the friend group will start to fucking hate that guy for real.
Yep.
It stops being
and
a
he'll
joke.
start to internalize some of the criticisms you made about him and like make it personality traits. But so like also like not everybody you're sharing it to thinks it's an ironic joke.
Yeah.
Right? So if 10,000 people see a meme that you posted and you turn like 8, 9, 10 of those people into agreeing with it, You've just made 8 more Nazis.
It's like
you just accidentally helped make 8 more racists.
That's like I get so annoyed
fucked.
every time I see somebody who I know isn't a Nazi share a Stone Toss comic on Facebook.
Right.
Because Stone Toss is unironically and openly a literal Nazi. The guy who draws it is on the record as just being a fucking actual, literal, 100% unironic Nazi.
I love the Stone Toss memes that aren't him.
Where they edit them?
Yeah, where they edit them and like take his art and fucking make them all progressive and shit. Those are great.
Yeah, I know one of the people who does that regularly has actually named it like Stone Toss is a Nazi.
Yeah,
like that's like because he is.
What's another one of your you had another domino theory story, didn't you?
Oh, I can't remember at this point. There are so many. Like
there were so many we talked about.
What I love is like you can honestly kind of connect almost anything this way if you put some thought into it. And I think that's an interesting exercise because it does do a lot to show how shit's not just random.
No.
Everything impacts everything else. Everything is connected to everything else. Mm-hmm. And shit that you do that you might not think of as being important can have massive implications later on. And you don't want to focus on that too much. You don't want to become like fucking neurotic about it.
No.
But like you have to be aware that like if you were doing something that could have a negative impact, it likely will.
I like to exist with purpose.
Yeah.
I don't mean that in any kind of like egocentric way. I mean maybe I am. But I have, for many years now, and more so as of late, good therapy, working on things, but for years, I like to exist with purpose.
Right.
I walk with purpose. If you notice, like, I'm one of those fast walkers, right?
Yeah. I
don't like to and it's not just because, like, I like to walk fast. It's like, why waste time going from point A to point B, right? Like, I'm going to do a thing with purpose. I choose the words that I say carefully when I'm addressing staff members or employees. Yeah. Right? Like, everything I do is with a purpose, for the most part. I don't like to do things that don't have one unless it's just for me and for my fun, right? Yeah. And that's not most of my time. Most of my time is doing things for the world, right? Yeah. Or out in the world. And in that case, everything I do, I like to think about the repercussions of it, how it affects me, what it's going to do in my life. And not like I need to be neurotic. I need to think 8,000 steps ahead. Right. But I do like to play the tape through
and I would
on everything I do.
I would like if when all is said and done and looking back on the totality of my life, whenever the end finally comes, which based on my genetics is at least 40 years off. Oh, God. I would like...
I get off this rock quicker than
I would
you, bitch.
like the sum total of my existence to be a net positive for the world, even if it's just in the tiniest of ways. I would like it if, when I am gone, that the world is the tiniest bit better off for me having been in it than had I not been at all.
Yes.
Because that's the thing. If everybody were to like just approach life that way... we could all be doing so well and have such an amazing world that we share. Because there's 8 billion of us right now. But if you look at the total number of people that have ever existed, like it is an exclusive club to be on the earth at the same time as everyone else.
Yeah.
And we are a speck of fucking dust.
Yep.
In the galaxy, let alone the universe.
I spend a little bit of every week trying to make sure it's a slightly better world in some ways.
Even if it's just making someone like feel a little better about themselves for 5 or 10 seconds.
Yep. Now there's some people I try to make feel worse about themselves because they deserve it.
Sometimes,
and I feel that's a service as well.
There are some people who making them feel worse about themselves is a net positive for the world.
100%.
Not everybody...
But we do this.
Yeah.
This is one of the things that we're doing to try to make the world a slightly better place.
You know, we are at 78 subscribers now.
78 now? Nice.
78 subscribers.
I want more.
But like we don't know most of these people. I don't know who our subscribers are. I don't know who's listening to me.
Please, subscribers though.
And
I want to ask you. Tell your friends. Tell your family members. Share. Please share our podcast with others. This is the part where we let you know, hey, we're growing, but it is, it's a slow process, and we want to go further. But this is 13 weeks in now?
14. This will be the 14th episode.
14th episode. This is our 14th episode. And we would like for you, if you're watching us, because I see some of you are all the time.
Yeah.
Like, talk about us. Share what we're doing, because we want to get this word out and this message out, the content that you're listening to, out to more people. And then we can actually start to monetize this
and
and make more content for you.
If you like talking into a microphone, do this yourself.
Do it.
Do it yourself.
But not all of you should. If you're not, especially, we need just a few more bearded white or less bearded white guys doing this.
There needs to be
Who knows?
more people doing this type of thing that aren't right-wing weirdos or right-wing adjacent weirdos.
Yes.
And if I'll tell you this right now, if somebody ever really emphatically tells you they're apolitical, they're a right-wing weirdo.
Yeah, can you imagine that, again, another stupid domino, but, we don't get fucking Donald Trump's ascendancy or the cult of Musk without fucking one guy getting a 5-minute set at a comedy club by the name of Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Like, he gets given a 5-minute set, and next thing you know...
I don't think Rogan would be the problem he is now if COVID hadn't broken his fucking brain in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought he was a weird problem for the right. But
he was always like not particularly thoughtful and way too willing to just believe whatever he was told while he was being told
and he
it.
brought on way too many right-wing grifters because
But that's gotten worse since 2020.
But those Proud Boy guys that I got into it with all the time were all Joe Rogan fans.
Yeah.
Right? And so 2017, 2018, 2019, all of them were fucking Joe Rogan fans.
And it's a problem.
And then they got worse after COVID.
It's a problem that there are spaces online that we have just completely given to that ideology. Well,
I mean, they have their own fucking sites now.
But
Truth Social and Parler and fucking Rumble are all theirs, and I'm only over there sometime.
But
and I can't.
But you even look at things like bodybuilding forums where that should not be something that is necessarily political, but it is now. It has become that.
Yeah,
they have taken over that space when the idea of taking care of your body and getting in the best shape you can shouldn't be.
Yeah,
it should just be something you do for yourself.
I don't know a lot of left-leaning people who are into bodybuilding. I know I've met some, right? I know a few. I've got a friend who does, but
all the ones I'm aware of are on TikTok.
Yeah, but I don't know a lot of them. I've got because back when I was sober before I realized that I could manage alcohol and drugs sometimes, as long as I, was careful. I did the whole meetings and AA thing, right? And I met some really sober people, who were, really into fitness. Sober. And so I'm still friends with a couple who are into bodybuilding and weightlifting and MMA and shit that, are on the left because otherwise they wouldn't fucking still be
honestly,
my friend.
MMA is mostly part of the problem.
Yeah.
The biggest part of the problem.
Oh, yeah. So many fucking angry dude bros.
Dana White has been a net negative for humanity.
Yeah. But yeah, your actions in the world lead to other things. They always do.
It's just how it works.
Yeah. That fucking, was it the second Matrix movie? The second Matrix movie. There's that really fucking weird,
Reloaded.
Reloaded. But there's that one scene with the fucking Merovingian.
Yeah, he was mostly in the second one.
Yeah, and I actually loved that scene where they're talking about causality, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And one thing leads to another. We're all causal creatures. And one of the good things I liked about Sam Harris's writing, when he talked about his argument against free will and how we live in this causal fucking universe where one thing leads to another, but your individual decisions are a limited data set, right?
Right.
But the information, the decisions that you make extrapolate outward and impact other things. And we exist in that world. And it's so fascinating. And people should care about that more. We should, and I don't mean obsess over it. I just mean care about it a little bit.
Just give a shit.
Yeah.
Just give a shit.
Find it fascinating. Because if you start reading history like that, you'll get a better understanding of the world through actually, weirdly enough, a historical, dialectical, fucking, materialist framework.
It's funny how that works.
Yeah. If you actually follow chains. So in causal events, it's great.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say. What do you guys say?
I think that's all I got this week.
Shit. Cool.
This is probably going to be our longest episode.
Yeah, and Actually, it was kind of fun.
Yeah, no, it was a good time.
Good time.
It's a good time. It's amazing how unfocused we've been while sober the last 2 weeks.
Right?
I don't really know how that works, although I have always said that after the second drink, I become almost neurotypical.
Right, fair.
So
last week I was exhausted, so I just...
This week I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
I just didn't sleep last night for some reason.
But this week I've just been having fun with the topic.
Yeah.
And the ranting, because there's been so much, and...
Hopefully next week is less news rich.
Yeah, I hope so too.
I'd like to be able to.
I have my doubts.
I have my doubts. We'll see.
The world is.
Things are moving fast.
It's a vampire set to drain.
Yeah.
That's right, Billy. I said it.
Yeah.
All right. This
has been The Grift.
I'm Rev and Gonz. This is Gonzo.
We'll be doing this next week, and until then, give us all your fucking money.
Give us your fucking money.